15th, 2020 orders imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Southborough Advisory Committee will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Southborough's website at www.southboroughtown.com. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch or participate in the meeting may do so in the following manner by finding the meeting at www.southboroughtown.com/remote meetings. No in-person attendance of members of the public, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite our best efforts, we will post on Southborough's website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. All right. So, hi, everyone. First time we've seen each other since town meeting.
Hi again.
Yeah. It was nice to see everybody in person, too, at town meeting. It really was very pleasant to sit next to everybody. And Mr. Rennie, it was nice to hear from you by text. I hope you were having a good time. It was an interesting day, which we'll talk about in a minute. All right, let's get our minutes caught up first. Claire, yeah, there she is. So Claire's done yeoman's work to get us to the point we are tonight. So we should be able to get them all done and be totally caught up by the time we leave tonight. Okay, so we're going to approve hopefully 3 sets of minutes. One is real easy, which was a little bit of work we did on the 22nd. Then we've got the Board of Selectmen portion of the joint meeting on April 13th, and we've got May 19th. So let's start with 413, first piece of it. All right, any comments on what Claire circulated on that one? So I'll start with Jason.
I'm good.
Tim? Okay, Andrew.
On line 106, I don't know, you force PB to act. I mean, you say planning board, I would just put maybe a PB by planning board if we're going to use the acronym.
You just wanted to say planning board? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, just say planning board.
Got it.
And one more thing, Claire, to add at the end of that sentence, I'll just interject, is put to act without constructive approval. There is no mechanism to force planning board to act without constructive approval. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay. So Judy, is that it for you, Andrew? Is that it for you?
Yep.
Okay, Judy.
I'm fine.
John.
No edits.
You were there. Okay, so I've got a few. Sorry. So Claire, go to line 8. Start with 18. This is just a typo. So included this is line 18, kind of almost to the end of it. It says the IT direct. So just make it the IT director.
Oops. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. All right, and then I actually want you to get rid of a couple of sentences here. Go to line 19 at the end of it where it starts with they have funding. I'd like to see you delete that whole sentence, the next sentence, all the way down to line 22 where it ends with capital budget. What you say there is not wrong, but it's not totally right either. So I just want to get rid of it. We don't need to put the details of their budget in there. They've got their budget. You've got the details of that with what got approved. Okay.
Add one more, Claire. On line 139, the vote, I think it's 7-0 technically, but it's a motion to adjourn. I don't think we need to worry too much.
Well, got to get right. So I agree, 7-0. All right, then
Claire, my math is bad.
That's okay, 7-0. Then go to line 52. It says Andrew Pfaff offered his thoughts on IT staffing that both, and then you got the number 2 after, so just get rid of the number 2. So both permanent.
Okay.
Okay. Then go to line 66. I want you just to delete 66 and 67 completely because it's not quite accurate, and I don't want to bother to correct. We've got that in other minutes. So I just don't want to try to correct it. It's not worth it.
Okay.
We don't need the detail. Okay, 71, I want you to get rid of the same thing there too, because that's not exactly what we did. So 71 and then 72 until you get to KC.
Kathy, until where?
You get to KC on 72.
Okay, yep,
All right. Right now go down to 88.
Yep.
And I think you just put an extra word in there. So you say this agenda item wrapped item. So just get rid of the second item. Okay, next page. And we got that one, so we know we took care of that one. Okay, so on line 115 at the end where you say an ad hoc, put an one ad hoc committee.
and
And-
ad hoc. what?
One, you put the one, put number one. We can only be on one ad hoc, so
Okay,
you can only sit on one ad hoc committee.
yep,
Okay,
I don't know if you want to specify, Kathy, that it's per member, not per board.
that's what I'm trying to do there. You can sit on one ad hoc committee.
Right.
Um,
So with the 7 of us here, we could represent 7 different ad hoc boards.
Yeah, or we could all 7 sit on the same board.
Right. There are people in town who are trying to interpret it differently.
So you see what he's saying, Claire? We want to make it clear that any member can sit on one ad hoc committee. You could say that any member. And then you can put in
Yep.
parentheses, multiple members can sit on the same committee. Okay, but at the end of that, you also need to say that we can also, or sit on one moderator appointed committee, which is a permanent committee, which is basically personnel and public works planning board. And then I want you to get rid of that last bullet point because that's not exactly right as far as what a quorum is, what we've decided a quorum is.
okay.
Okay, just get rid of it. Okay, that's it for that one.
So, why don't I do this just to make sure that if you guys do approve this tonight as edited,
Yep.
I'll send it to you before sending it on to the meetings group, just to make sure I got everything
Right,
correct.
just send it to me because I made most of the
Yeah.
changes. Don't
Okay.
make
Yep.
anybody else read this again. Just send it to me. I'll look at it. Okay, so someone make a motion to approve the April 13th joint Board of Selectmen meeting minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Second,
All right, so I believe Tim beat Judy. Roll call vote. I still have to do it one more time. Jason,
Aye.
Judy,
aye.
Tim,
Aye.
AP,
Aye.
Mr. Rooney,
Aye.
and Cook is aye. So Claire 6-0 for those minutes. Okay, now let's do the 19th. That was our last meeting before town meeting. Okay. Jason,
These were well done.
you say you're okay?
Yep.
Well, Jason, you should have caught something. This was right up your alley. I'll tell her 40 years in a minute. Okay.
It's like a
Anybody
trick
else?
question.
This was a trick. Anything else? Anybody else on 519 before I make one slight correction?
Good.
Okay. All right.
Thanks.
So go to Claire, line 133. So St. Mark's and Faith School did not agree to split the cost of the defibrillators. St. Mark's is doing that completely.
Okay, all right, that was the thing that I had the question on.
They split the cost of the turnout gear, right?
Yeah, but they split the cost of the turnout gear.
Yes. So they split the
So-
cost of turnout gear, but St. Mark's is going to absorb the 100% of the cost of the 18K for the defibrillators. So I don't want St. Mark's and Faye to read our minutes and Faye say, "Oh, we didn't say that." And St. Mark's say, "Well, it says you did, so we're going to pay for half."
Okay, so it's that they agreed to split the cost of the turnout gear.
The first year. So they're going to split the cost of turnout gear for fiscal year 22.
Okay,
And you got it right then. Then St. Mark's is going to continue to pay their half for the next 2 years, for 23 and 24. We don't know if Faye's going to agree. They have not agreed to do it yet.
okay,
Okay. And then only for fiscal year 22, for the 18 case defibrillators, St. Mark's is going to pay for that.
okay.
Okay. Now, Mr. Rooney's going to have to help me here. Go to line 181. This is the St. Mark's Bell Tower CPA vote. John, didn't you vote against this?
I did.
That's what I thought. So Claire, the initial vote should be 043, not 034. He did not abstain. Okay.
Okay,
I didn't think he did, and he says he didn't. Then on the next vote, then, where Judy changed her vote, then it would be 1, 4, 2. Excuse
No,
me.
because you had
Was-
Andrew
was that-
Dennington.
Right. So 1, okay, the next one is against, right? So that is still, that's 3, right? So it's 1, 3, 3. Right.
You can't have 7 you can't have 7. When Judy changed her mind in the last meeting, you can't have 7 because Andrew Dennington was not
Yeah.
a member of the committee at that point.
I
So you
think
have
it was
you have
one-
to add to 6.
It was
And we
1, 2,
know
3.
we had 3 abstention, yeah.
Andrew was against, so that's going to be 2 then. So
That'd be
1,
1, 2, 3.
2, 3. Is that what you
Yeah.
said, Andrew? Okay, so 1, 2, 3.
but if I remember correctly, John Rooney was not at that meeting.
That Judy changed her mind?
That's right.
Correct.
When,
But we didn't take a motion. It was
No.
just
right, it
changing
was
what the vote would have-
discussed.
She just changed it, so you're right, we didn't officially revote. Judy just said she changed her mind. So you're right, John wasn't at this meeting on the 19th. So just.
So-
I would just say it would most likely be 1, 2, 3.
If we had formally revoted.
But if a new vote was taken, it would most likely be. Yeah, I think that's pretty caged.
And make it clear, it was Judy that changed her mind,
Change would reflect one member, Judy.
which we know is women's, which we do know is women's prerogative.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Okay, that's those 2. Now, I sent around this afternoon, real simple minutes from the 22nd.
Kathy, I had one more on that one.
Sorry.
Line 39. Claire, it's town accountant and treasurer. It should be treasurer.
Oh, thank you.
Although we like Brian, he is a treasurer.
He is a treasurer. Treasurer's a treasurer. Okay, so that's it for the 19th. So can someone make a motion to approve those as revised?
So moved.
Second.
Second,
Okay, I think Judy won that one. So Judy seconded Claire. So roll call vote. Judy,
Bud's eye.
Cook is aye. Jason,
aye.
Tim,
Aye.
AP.
Aye.
Mr. Rooney was not there. So do you want to vote, John?
No, abstain.
Okay, so Claire 501.
Mhm.
Okay, the 22nd. So John, you weren't there. So all we did was basically meet for like 5 minutes and voted to not support Article 39, which was the flag road truck exclusion. And I couldn't find what I wrote down that day as far as time we started. So I guessed at the times. I guessed at who made the motion. So if anybody wants to correct that, please do. I don't know if I got the times exactly right.
I think that was
It's
right.
close. It's close.
I remember 9:35.
Okay. All right. Can someone make a motion for the 22nd?
I move we approve the minutes as written for May 22nd meeting.
Okay, Claire, I emailed those to you a few minutes ago.
Mhm.
Okay. Second.
Second.
All right. Roll call vote. Jason,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
AP.
Aye.
Judy,
Aye.
Cook is aye, and John, you want to abstain?
Correct. Thank you.
Okay, 501. So John, we're going to do a postmortem in a minute for the town meeting so you can hear about the day.
Excuse me just for a second. Would John be abstaining since he wasn't there? Wouldn't it just be?
You're right,
a
you're
vote?
right, you're right, you're right. He
Okay.
wasn't there, so
No, he's
votes-
abstaining because he's here the day we're voting.
well, that's right too. So, right.
Oh,
Claire,
okay.
He's abstaining for the vote
Yep,
because he wasn't there.
Gotcha. Okay,
So,
you're right, Andrew.
501. Okay. All right. I'm going to reverse 3 and 4 for a second. I'll do a chair report afterwards. All right. So I thought we'd just go around the room real quick and do a quick postmortem of the town meeting, things that we learned, things that we should try to improve on next time, and see what everybody thought as far as how the day went overall. So I'm just going to go around the room with the way I see you. So Jason, you want to start?
I mean, I thought kudos to everyone that was involved in the budget presentations. I mean, just looking at the types of questions that were fielded on town meeting floor, I think obviously we sat through, the number of weeks in a row. I think it was 14, but someone can correct me if I'm wrong. But obviously the collaboration to reach consensus, I think was really important. So I thought that was certainly significant. Obviously there were very similarly, on the capital budget, right? Very few questions on some very large items. So either people were very much in support of them, or they had at least understood why they were being brought forward. So I thought that was also favorable. And then obviously I think there's a lot to discuss on the advisory bylaw and the permanent capital bylaw. And I think, I look forward to hearing from more than 125 people that were in attendance when that vote was taken, and trying to get to a consensus of, what the town in the majority that are in the room when, those are represented would be, willing to support. I, think there was definitely some misinformation out there as well. And it got, candidly, in my opinion, to a point where no arguments were going to change some of the misinformation. So, it is what it is, but I also look forward to hearing from people that have constructive comments for all of us on how to improve it and which pieces are the most controversial. And I think we need to bring it back. In what form is obviously the subject to much conversation, probably between this committee, capital planning, the board of selectmen, and the moderator.
Tim?
I think we should attack it in pieces, is what I think we should do. Keep it simple. Because there are going to be people who, you have your faction that, is very theoretical about how they see government and how it's separated, and they're never going to change their minds. You have your faction that sees conspiracies everywhere. So the more that they can, the more complicated we make the vote, the more they tend to get together to gang up against it. So that was my takeaway. If we want to make changes to any of the advisory bylaws, then we have to do it very tactically.
Yep. Andrew?
Let's say first, I thought it was a very well-run town meeting between the moderator and the clerk's office, putting it all together. And luckily, it didn't rain, so that was great. I think I kind of agree with Tim that maybe we should break it up into maybe smaller warrant articles, breaking it up into pieces.
We're going to talk about that in detail, so you don't have to necessarily dwell on what to do with that one. That's going to be the subject of the meeting on the 23rd.
Yeah, and I thought that the budget actually went through smoother than I thought it would. And I think the fact that we were in sync with the selectmen and the Board of Health and on some of the changes that were made on the floor, I think went a long way. So I think it was a great job to get to that consensus.
Judy?
Yeah, I had the same response. I thought it was pretty smooth and that it went well. So. And it
So-
wasn't boring. Which
Well,
is
the
not.
first thing I want to say is Andrew Pfaff made us all look pretty smart with everything. So John, it was a hot day.
Mhm.
And Andrew Pfaff brought advisory 2 really big golf-like umbrellas. And so we sat under the shade while everybody
Yeah,
else.
it was nice. Thank you.
And so that was really, really, really helpful. It really made it not that hot for us. And then he brought a
Mm.
cooler full of really good food and drinks. So we were up there fine compared to everybody else. I also thought the meeting itself ran really smoothly. I thought Jim Haggerty did a great job putting it together. I think Paul Semino is a pretty good moderator. I think he's a very good moderator, so he knows how to handle things. I thought he did a good job too. So I thought the meeting itself ran really smoothly. If I had made bets before the meeting, I would have lost a lot of money. I would have bet we were going to have budget issues, and I never dreamed we were going to run into the buzzsaw with 32 and 33 that we did. I would have bet the church CPA project would not have passed, and I would have been doubtful that the illumination bylaw would have passed. So I would have lost the whole bet. So I'd gone down in flames on that one. So anyway, so John, I don't know what you've heard, but long story short, as you know, the church project passed by 1 vote. The only controversy pretty much the whole day was the advisory article in conjunction with the next one. So the advisory article was postponed. Al Hamilton got up and pretty much led the charge about not wanting to mix the executive function with the legislative function. That was his main argument on it. It wasn't even a close vote. It was like, I think 125-75 or something like that. So it wasn't even that close. And then the Board of Selectmen next withdrew Article 33 because they were so related. If we hadn't done that, we would have Jason and Andrew would have had to decide which committee they're going to be on. So they quickly withdrew it. So we didn't have to deal with that. So the current situation is still a situation. The Capital Planning Committee is still an ad hoc committee with Andrew and Jason on it, which were legal. Karen Shemkus tried to convince the crowd that advisory could not be on a standing committee, and Aldo disagreed with that. So I guess we got past that. If that were true, if she were right, the bylaw that's written right now would be illegal because we can already be on a standing committee appointed by the moderator. So it was interesting. Marty Houlihan kept her presentation down to 5 minutes and did a pretty good job with the professor. Professor is well-spoken, so that passed. There was questions on it, but it got passed. The noise bylaw failed, but there was a lot of discussion on that one too. We told the audience that it's not that we don't think we should have a noise bylaw. We just don't think this is the right noise bylaw. The very last article was the Flag Road one, and we had voted part of the meeting to not support it, but that one passed pretty quickly. And it's just it's an advisory thing. They're asking Board of Selectmen to please consider it, so it's not a big deal on that one too. So overall, I thought it was a really, really successful town meeting. I don't remember any town meeting where the budget flew through like this one did. Regina McAuliffe always likes to talk about the budgets that are high percentage increases, so she did, and that was fine. So it just went flying through. There were no questions on Board of Health. The amendments went through that we wanted to go through. So that part went as smooth as it possibly could. So we were feeling pretty good until we got to 32. Meals tax went flying through. No problems with that. No one questioned the timing or even doing meals tax. So that went through fine. So there were some really good things that came out of this meeting. So overall, I thought it was a good success. So we just now got to figure out what to do with the advisory bylaw. So there's that. I'm also not one to get on the blog very often, but this time I felt like I had to say something as far as trying to explain what we were trying to do. And I admitted we should have separated the things with what I wrote. So we'll see where we go. Al Hamilton has called me since then, and he'd like to come to the meeting that we discussed this. He'd like to participate. So I said, great, we would like you to participate. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so I don't know if we don't know the date of the fall town meeting yet. The Board of Selectmen haven't discussed that, so we still don't know when that's going to be. I would think certainly not before September and possibly not before October, but that's to be determined. All right, chair report. So the biggest thing on our plate right now is to recruit new members, and everybody's trying. So I am cautiously optimistic that with as many people that are trying and with as many feelers that are out, that we'll get some good candidates soon. Haven't heard of anybody actually stepping up yet, but as many people that are being asked, I'm hoping that next time we meet, we're going to have a couple names as far as people who have stepped up. So we will see. We need to, with Mr. Rooney has announced that he's not going to re-up. His term is up in June. I hope he changes his mind, but I don't think he's going to. So with John retiring, then we're down to 5. Judy has decided to stay, which is great. So we will have, we'll have to have everybody at every meeting to have a quorum until things get changed. So it's something we're really going to have to focus on. Okay. Anybody have anything else to say about that? Anybody know anything that you want to report?
I guess I would just say on the piece about the membership in the 5, given absent legislative action, right? I think we need to carefully select the date in early July that we meet, that we have to do any departmental transfers or formally vote on anything for the reserve fund, because we're going to need everyone in the room, right? We can't even have one dial-in based on that math, unless Mr. Semino appoints someone prior to that date.
Yep, and you have to have that work done, Jason, as you know, before July 15th. So we will have to, and you're talking about prime vacation time. So we'll see what everybody says in a few minutes. We're going to talk about dates. Let's see. So as far as future meeting logistics, right now, all we know is that the governor's order, emergency order expires June 15th. So right now, our next meeting on June 23rd will be in person. I took a look at the meeting rooms that are available on the 23rd, and right now, the public safety building room that we like so much says it's not available. I've got to call into Alicia Porter, the admin for the fire department, but she goes home at 2:30 and then doesn't work on Friday. So I just left her voicemail this afternoon to see if it's really not available, or whether that's just not back online yet. Mark Purple said it was. It does show the townhouse is available, so maybe it is. Maybe it's just being used that night for something else, but I'll find out for sure.
It is back online because I just booked a capital planning meeting, so it may be just a date and time.
Okay, all righty. So my question to everyone is, well, first of all, the Senate did vote. So this is a bill. The governor has filed a bill to extend the ability to have remote meetings through next April. The Senate took it up today. I don't know what the vote was. The House is going to take it up either tomorrow or next week. Mark talked to Carolyn Dykman, and that's what she said. And I asked him, did she have any idea whether she thought it would pass? She said she didn't think there was a lot of opposition to it. She said maybe the date, that might not fly as far as being out so far, but she didn't seem to think there was a lot of opposition to it. So it might pass soon, which then gives us options. So my question to you guys is, if we have an option of having a Zoom meeting like we've had for the last year, or meeting in person, which one would you prefer? And if you need to say, well, it depends on what date, say that. So I'm just have an idea of what you want to do if we have a choice. So Jason, let me start with you.
Depends on the date.
Okay. And could you tell that I thought you were going to say that? Tim?
Zoom.
Okay. AP?
Zoom.
Judy?
Sort of like to do it in person.
Okay, so it's got to be all, I will say this, it's got to be, as far as our committee, it's got to be all one way or the other. We don't want to go back. I don't think we want to go back to the old rules as far as what you do with the call-in. So we'll either meet in person or we won't. Instead of,
But we could zoom in from the same location.
Yeah, why can't you have a computer, like, let's just say Zoom is allowed again. Why couldn't you have Zoom open in, let's just say, the public safety building meeting room? That captures the people that are there. And then those that are remote could still Zoom in. So it kind of accomplishes both. I know that's how the townhouse meeting room is set up, because that's how the Board of Selectmen have been meeting. I'm not thinking it's ready for anyone else yet, but
they were all there, correct?
It also,
Office.
yeah, it also has the benefit of bringing in the remote audience.
It helps with minutes. It's got the remote audience. Sometimes it helps us logistically if you're driving like crazy to get here. So, but Jason, I'm not quite sure what you're saying. Are you saying have it as a Zoom meeting, but we're in person?
Well, so if there was a subsection of the group that really felt it'd be beneficial to be in the same room and are not as in favor of Zoom as some others, have a room option available. But if obviously there's going to be one person sitting in a meeting room, that doesn't do anything, right? So I think candidly, Kathy, you probably need the chair in the public meeting room to run the meeting if you're going to have kind of a dual option. But let's just say you were not going to be in the meeting room. I think logistically that would be a nightmare.
We could also, Kathy, you and Judy could come and we could sit at the table behind us. Right? Kind of thing.
Okay, so you're saying Judy and I go there, right?
Yeah, I think that would be, and then it would just be like a regular Zoom meeting. It's just you got 3 people sharing a screen.
I
Wait,
did
wait.
that today with someone. That's what they were doing. They were in a conference room and everybody else was Zoom. So they just did their conference room thing. They'd gone back to their office and then everybody else was on Zoom.
No, let's do all or nothing. I'll do whatever the group decides, but
Well, that's kind of my vote. I don't want this to be any more confusing than it is.
yeah, I'd like to see you guys in person. I think the conversation is smoother. It's much easier for me than doing it this way.
Well, I'll come over to Judy's house.
Yeah, great. We'll have a big party and, you've been hearing the birds outside, Kathy. That was not my bird. All that chirping was outside. So I moved that bird just for you.
So
I don't know. I'll do whatever you want, but I think to see each other, to have it feels much more casual to have a conversation face to face. And I like it better, but either way is okay.
So hearing you, it sounds like we should do, if we get the chance to do, so that they've got to pass the law, right? Right now, we don't have the chance to, they're all going to be in person unless this law gets passed. So if we have a choice, it sounds like maybe we do both. We have some meetings in person. And I'm telling you, it was really nice to see everybody in person at town meeting. I just truly enjoyed sitting there next to everybody. And I didn't realize how much I enjoyed it. I got home, I thought it was it was a relaxing day until we got to Article 32. So Jason, tell me what you're trying to, what are your restrictions as far as in person versus Zoom? When can you not do in person, I guess is.
If we have a meeting on the 23rd, I will not be there in person.
Okay. All right, so let's talk.
Mid-July, I'm okay in person, and then August is going to be tough.
Okay, so mid-July you can do in person. 6/23. Okay, so 6/23 will be Zoom if we can do Zoom. Okay, and if we can't, we got a problem. Mr. Winnie will still be here, so we'll still have 5. But I'm still trying to set a meeting date where everybody can come to it. So
so if you have 5 in the room, then I could dial in via Zoom or old-fashioned telephone.
Okay. All right. So, yep, that's all that. Okay. Now let's talk about the date of the next meeting, because we have to meet somewhere between 7:01 and 7:15 to approve the or interdepartmental transfers and the reserve fund transfers. So 7/7 is 2 weeks from June 23rd. So that would be the normal date if we just kept meeting every other Wednesday. The 4th is on the weekend. My guess is most people are going to take off either the Friday before or the Monday after if they have a choice. So we're not interfering with that other than for people who are going to take the whole week off. So is there anyone not available on July 7th?
I'm not available if it has to be in person.
Okay, but you could do Zoom.
I can do Zoom.
Same for me. Zoom only on that day.
Okay. Anybody else that can't at least do a Zoom on the 7th? Okay.
I think the other thing you have to think about with that, Kathy, is are Mark, Brian, and Carla can actually be ready on the 7th based on where
I agree.
it's a tough year end to fall on a Thursday before a holiday weekend, but they've worked miracles before. But
well,
want to make it the 12th?
Won't be working Friday afternoon before, and so does anyone know when the town is going to take off for the 4th?
typically it's if the holiday falls on a Sunday, most municipalities are closed on a Monday. If the holiday falls on a Saturday, the holiday is Friday.
I wonder if they have a choice because they already get half a day off on Friday, so that doesn't help them a lot. Okay, so let's do this. Let's wait and see how this law plays out, and then I'll just keep you posted. We'll keep talking about it until we get the date set. I'll talk to Brian and see when he thinks he's going to be ready with the information on the transfer. Because Jason's right. He's got to get the books closed and know where the needs are. Jim Haggerty sent me an email today. He's got a reserve fund transfer because it's really silly. He's got excess expenses for early voting that he's been totally reimbursed for by the state, but the state won't let it come to his budget. The state says it's got to go in the general fund. So his budget still is going to be overdrawn. So it's silly, but he's got to technically have a reserve fund transfer.
What is general fund if it doesn't go to a budget?
It goes into local receipts.
Oh, the revenue. Okay.
Yep. So doesn't impact anything. In the end, you get to the same piece. You just have more free cash and less reserve fund to close out to free cash. So in the end, the net is exactly the same. So it's all kind of silly. But anyway, it won't matter as long as we have enough money in the reserve fund to do everything else, which we don't know yet. So Jason's right. Brian has to have time to do this. Last year, it was really close to the 15th. It may have been on the 15th when we did it. So I'll talk to him and see what he thinks. Mark has said that they've got a lot going on right now and they're really busy doing all kinds of stuff. So I'm not sure what all it is, but he said they're really busy. So we'll see. So TBD as far as when that July meeting is going to be, but all 5 of us, if we don't have new appointees, have to be there. Okay. All righty. So hopefully we'll know by Monday whether this bill is going to pass. And since the governor filed it, you would think he would sign it. So we should be able to get this nailed down next week once we know what our choices are. But at least I know what you guys can and can't do and what your preferences are. All right. All right. So the other thing we've got to recruit too, besides new members, is a new recording secretary. Claire has said that she is going to submit her resignation as far as recording secretary. So I'm not sure if she's going to change her mind between now and then, but right now she is resigning. So Claire, we can talk about that later, but she does want to move on. It's not easy, as we know, doing the minutes, and she's done a great job for us. So we may have to recruit another recording secretary too. So we've got lots of recruiting to do. The only other thing I know that is going on in town that I think you guys would be interested in is the Board of Selectmen have not decided what to do as far as town council, but they're coming pretty close to it. They're going to vote soon. Aldo has still to be interviewed. He's had some knee surgery since town meeting. If you saw him on town meeting, he was definitely limping. So he had a knee replacement. I think he has not recovered quite as fast as he thought. So they're waiting to interview him, and then they'll make the decision on that. So that's coming. All right. So that's what I've got for chair report. Okay. The main purpose of this meeting is to plan. So we have accumulated a list of things that we've agreed we wanted to tackle once we got past town meeting. So we're here. So I sent you about 4:30 this afternoon the list, and I'll pop it up on the screen in a second. So the goal tonight is to refine this list, add to it, subtract from it, and then start deciding how to work on it so that next meeting, the 23rd, if that's the date we do it, we are off to the races as far as starting to look at these things. Some of these things are going to take quite a bit of time. They're going to take a lot of effort. Some are not quite as effort intensive. Okay, so Claire is confirming she would like to move on, but she's not going to leave us until we have someone. So thank you, Claire.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, very nice. Okay. All right, so I'm going to screen share this. So Jason, can I do it?
You have co-host privileges, so.
Okay. Can everyone see the Word document? Yeah.
This is what you put out earlier today, right?
Yes. So you can either look at it on your own screen or you can look at it on the screen.
Yeah, I
You can
printed
get
it.
a copy if you printed it. So here it is in case you don't have it in front of you. Okay, so everything on this list are things that we on, so I didn't add anything to this. This is the stuff we talked about during the year that I just kept a list of. So I'm just going to start from the top and get a, take your temperature as far as whether you want to keep this on the list. And then we'll go back to them and talk about how to start tackling them. So we talked a lot about having some type of stabilization fund in the town. We've talked about that for a couple of years. I know there's a couple of you that really think we should do it. I didn't say what type, there's several types as far as what towns can or can't do, totally sanctioned by the state. So is there still interest in looking at possibly, when we can afford to do it, you got to have the money to do it, starting a stabilization program for some aspect of our finances, operations, capital, etc. Okay. So Andrew P is not a yes, which doesn't surprise me. Jason?
I agree it needs to be studied. I don't know where it obviously will land. And obviously, I know capital planning is taking up a capital specific one, but I do agree this should be studied more broadly. So if the intent of advisory is to study it more broadly, we should just find a way not to duplicate efforts.
I totally agree with that. And this is one I think, Jason, is really under our purview as far as what we should be doing, because you need to look at it for the whole town, not just a piece of it. And you can have a broad fund that you can use for capital. You can do it for capital, but you can also have the fund use it for capital. So a broad fund would include capital. So I do think we should do this. Okay, so, and I agree, we don't know how it's going to come out, but we're going to look at it. Tim, any reason not to do this one?
I don't know. This is the kind of thing I would want to do, when times are good.
I agree that you got to have the money to do it, or you're going to get started. So I agree, but there may be some money that we can use to do this, which we're going to talk about with another one. So if that is your reason not to do it, wait till we get to number 3, and you may then say, well, this probably is a time to do it, because there really may be some money from these laws that have been passed that are trying to help with the pandemic. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Not sure, but maybe. I tell you what made me possibly think that this is something that should be considered. I was in the camp that no, you don't need to do it. Let the money stay in the taxpayers' hands. They've got better uses for it. Same thing that John Butler concluded with his white paper on advisory a few years ago. But this year, when we started out, the reason we started out so much in the hole was because of the way several things had bounced, and they all bounced the wrong way, including free cash. So free cash is something you can stabilize too, and just say, we're never going to use more than, make up the number, $1 million of free cash. The free cash can be what it is, but we're only going to use this much of it every year. So we start off with the same number in our savings account. So that, I never really thought about the impact of free cash bouncing up and down and up and down, and it bounced big time this year. So that was one of the reasons that we started in such a hole. Capital was another. So there's another way to use stabilization. So I really did start thinking about this is something we really need to look at again and readdress this. I know Brian Ballantyne, I think definitely would like to see this done. So we'll see, but I think we should definitely look at it again, readdress it again, and discuss it from A to Z. Okay, Judy, what do you think?
I know absolutely nothing about this. This is so out of my comfort zone. If you're talking about the stabilization question.
But Judy's basically, and to compare it to what an individual does, it's a savings account. So that when you have a bad year, you can pull money out of it and still keep your year-over-year tax increases reasonable. So they don't bounce up and down, like 9% one year, 2% the next year, like they would have bounced if we didn't work as hard as we did this past year. So it's just a way to keep things stable. That's why it's called that. So you've got year-over-year increases that look reasonable and don't vary a whole lot from year to year. So it gives people something to kind of count on, like you're doing your own finances. That's why you have a savings account, right? For rainy days. So the state has one. The state has it, and they call it the rainy day fund. So that's why the state was able to. The state has to balance its budget too. So that's how they balance their budget versus fiscal year 21. fiscal year 20, excuse me. Fiscal year 20. They dipped into their rainy day fund big time.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
All right. Where's Mr. Rennie? Are you still here? You must be below here.
He's here.
Yeah,
He's-
Kathy, I'm here, and Tim captured my feeling as well, is that, yeah, I think it's a good idea, but the likelihood of having stabilization money is, to me, very distant.
I
So I
Given-
wouldn't want,
I
I wouldn't
agree.
want to spend a lot of time on it.
There's been no money to do it, but we may end up with some money. Andrew Pfaff understands what I'm talking about. We may end up with some significant money from these laws if we roll up our sleeves and really work hard at trying to capture what we're entitled to and use it the right way. All right, so it sounds
Kathy?
like, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so I think at a minimum, I'd like to look into a road stabilization and a building stabilization. And it's basically our usual warrant articles for both of those, but classifying them as stabilization, I'm wondering how that will help our bond rating and our position with our auditor. I know the lack of stabilization overall has been an issue for them. So basically,
Has not been an
reclassifying
issue or has been an issue?
has been an issue.
Well, not for the bond rating.
But the bond rating stabilization doesn't really factor into it. Most of it's
Right.
based upon the economy of the town, but they did note in the bond write-up that we do have less than other town stabilization.
But we don't think it had any impact on the rating.
Correct. But if we can do something like classify the maintenance warrant article and the road article as stabilization funds, and it doesn't cost us any money, and we get additional benefit from an auditor and bond rating, I don't see why it wouldn't be something we look at.
But where is this surplus money coming from, Andrew?
Well,
Well,
John, every year we put $100,000 into a facilities maintenance article, which is basically
Right.
a building.
Which they
stabilization.
usually spend.
Correct, but if we just basically classify it as stabilization, right, that 100,000 becomes stabilization. And then the road, the 250,000 or 300, whatever it is, goes into the road stabilization. You know, then we get more credit for that money.
Yeah,
So
Andrew,
you're
not-
based-
from an accounting perspective, there's no credit for that.
And,
That-
and so
that's-
if it's in stabilization, then does it have to go to advisory in order to be spent?
I don't know the answer to that. I
Here's the
don't,
town meeting vote.
yeah, I
to
believe
release it.
when you do your budget, you just decide how much from the stabilization fund you're going to bring into the revenue side of it. Simple as that.
Maybe I'm not thinking about it correctly, but isn't this really like the OPEB fund that we've been putting about 250K into a year, right? This is another form of a fund. It is going to require additional funding, right? If we just take our normal 325 for road maintenance, 100 for facilities maintenance, and call it stabilization, that's just terminology. I think this is really additional money to allow, right, to Kathy's example of the $1 million of free cash, right? Like using down your free cash every year. So you're starting on a level playing field so that when you do have blips or unexpected, I think the last time stabilization was touched, based on at least my research, is when the ladder truck was purchased about 10 years ago. And the only reason they were able to fund it was through donations of the private schools, but also how high the stabilization was at the time. Is that right, Kathy? John would probably know too.
You know, I hate to disagree with something you said, Jason, because you do your research, but I don't think so. They may have used a little bit of it because there was a time that, let me just say this. This is so 13 years ago, I believe, was a town meeting where there was a real debate between Board of Selectmen and advisory. I was not on advisory, and this was John Butler's years, Al Hamilton's year. Marty Healy was probably on advisory then, where they really debated what to do with stabilization. We had a bunch of money that year. We had $3 million in it that had occurred because of one specific thing. And advisory won that argument at that town meeting and got it reduced to about $500,000. It's up to 600 right now, Jason. So the ladder truck came after that. So I don't think that they use stabilization for the ladder truck, but I'm not going to swear to it. I just know that the vote to take all those millions out And they pushed the tax rate negative for that 1 year when it was a negative year-over-year increase to get it all done. And it stayed pretty much that way. Why it's up to 6 something right now, I don't know. So I don't know what's caused it to go up a little bit because we haven't added anything to it. So
Investment,
it's
probably.
what's done. So it's been, so I don't think that there was any big use of stabilization for the ladder truck, Jason.
Okay.
Okay. All right, but let's not get in the weeds as far as this goes. So it sounds like we've agreed that this is something we really should look at again and really look at it in depth and decide whether we think it's something that should be brought forward. And we've got a fall town meeting. We can bring it forward to fall town meeting.
Kathy, if money goes into a stabilization, is there a shift in authority as to the ability to spend it, or does advisory have any role at all? I mean, it's not like a reserve transfer, correct?
It's not a reserve fund transfer, which we solely have jurisdiction over.
So if we have this stabilization, is it voted by town meeting to put, say, hypothetically, $1 million in it? And then who decides, town meeting again, as to how it's going to be allocated?
Tim just posted in the chat that he was stating that it's a 2/3 vote at town meeting.
To actually use it, that's what he's saying?
Yep.
Okay, so it sounds like we just never had this, as long as I'm an advisory, we've never done this. So it sounds like that it may even be a separate warrant article that 2/3 have to vote to actually use. And the town would be told by doing this is what the budget's going to look like, and this is what the tax rate's going to look like. So it sounds like it's a separate warrant article that you actually vote on to actually tap into. But we'll find out before we start talking about. We'll get all the details as far as how it works. Thank you, Tim. Okay, so let's keep going. Number 2, obvious.
Hey, Kathy, procedurally are we going to come back and maybe give
Yes.
divide these
back to
and
each
give
one.
homework
Yes.
to people?
I'm just
Okay.
going to go through them and see what the appetite is for doing them. Then we're going to come back and talk about how to actually approach each one. When, where, who. Okay. So yes, I'm coming back to each one. That's the whole purpose of this meeting tonight, is to plan on this. So we're coming back to them. Okay. Number 2 is obvious. We've got to readdress Article 32 as far as the advisory bylaw. We are going to talk about that in depth, and that's going to be talked about at the meeting, the next meeting we have, assuming it's the 23rd. And that's the one that Alan Hamilton has asked to come to, and I told him I'd make sure he knew what the date was. Okay, the third one is the one I was referring to that might give us the funds to start or to add to the 600K we've currently got in stabilization. So there's several sources of funding that the federal government has passed. As you all know, we call them the CARES Act from last March, and we call them the most recent one, the one that Biden passed, the American Rescue Plan. There's other things going on right now that have not been passed, and there's some other sources too, but those are the 2 big ones. There is a possibility that Southborough could end up with a 7-figure amount from at least the latter of the 2, the ARP, the American Rescue Plan. We don't know yet. And we would have to spend it certain ways, but if we spend it on things that we would have spent otherwise, then, money's fungible. We would have money left over that could be used possibly to fund the stabilization. TBD, we've got a lot of work to do this. So number 3 is a big one. Number 3 is one that's going to take truly rolling up our sleeves, helping the town finance team, Carla and Brian, figure out this and trying to get it done. So this one's going to take more time than probably any of them. We're going to come back to as far as who's going to take the lead on this one. So I'm trying to get a lead on this one, and then that lead can reach out to the people that they think are appropriate to help. We're not going to form a subcommittee for this. We're going to try to do it without that. But this is one that we really, I think, can help our finance team try to do, because there's a whole lot at stake here. Southborough has been allocated about $3 million from the American Rescue Plan. And I believe the schools have a different amount too on top of that. So there's a lot of money at stake with this last bill that was passed. And as you guys know, there's more to come, possibly, depending on whether this infrastructure plan that Biden has proposed gets passed, at least in part. All right, so we'll come back and talk about this in more detail. 4 is the revolving funds we've talked about. So as we all know, there are 10 town revolving funds. Most are small, some are totally static. The rec one is large, and then the schools have at least 2 inside the K through 8 budget that we never see. One is for rent and one is for the tuition from pre-K. So we've talked about going back and looking at this, looking at the philosophy for it, deciding whether we believe there should be some changes to these. So that's one that I think most people on advisory seem to think needs more exploring. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay. I mean, it may be even that, the little tiny ones, we say they're never used, so close them out, bring it back into the town. Okay, so we'll come back to that one. The next one is reviewing the road maintenance computations, including looking at a software program to formalize road maintenance used by other towns such as Lexington. Now, Sam Stivers seems to know a lot about that program, so I talked to him today about it, and he went on in great detail about how this program works. Andrew is our liaison to DPW. I believe that if we look at the road maintenance money that the town, that Karen has right now to use, you're going to determine that there's no money to use on just normal road maintenance because of all the money being spent on the downtown project. So it's something that I think we really got to help her with. So there's that one. The next one is.
So Kathy, on that one.
Yep.
This is something Capital is also looking at. So, and Andrew in particular is the one that's taking the lead and is going to hopefully liaise with someone, like one person from Public Works Planning Board and Karen, to bring something forward on this. So, and I don't know how you want to deal with that, but that's another one that I kind of saw as maybe potential duplication and not sure where it best fits.
And I knew that, Jason, as far as what Andrew was going to do. So I think that it's probably pretty obvious Andrew should be the person that does this. Sam Stivers has raised his hand. And of course, Sam is on Public Works Planning Board. So Sam would like to do this with Andrew. So when we come back to it, we'll decide whether we think that's the right thing to do. So whether Andrew, regardless of which hat he's wearing, he's probably the right person to do this. Right. So I see you're shaking your head yes so far. Okay, the next one is one that might surprise you. So I added this one. This is not one we talked about very much. Right now we have a 1% CPA surcharge on all of our tax bills, right? You basically take the value of your property, subtract $100,000, then multiply times the tax rate and then times 1%. So that's the surcharge that you have on your tax bills. Most people, it's less than $100 a year. When it was passed in 2003, the 3% was proposed initially. It failed, and then they went back and got the 1% passed. The reason I bring this up again is because if you take a look at what's going on now, the pool of state money that's available is growing. If you remember what Andrew Mills said at town meeting, he talked about the state piece of it going down. I don't think he's looked at this currently because the pool's actually gone up a lot because they doubled the fees that are used to fund it. On top of that, as Andrew Pfaff knows, if you were to adopt a 3% surcharge, you don't get 3 times what Southborough gets, you get more than 3 times. There is an incentive for towns to adopt a higher than 1%. Now, I know people who think we shouldn't have the surcharge at all. Some people think we shouldn't even have it. So we have it. I'm not proposing that we go back and challenge whether we should have it or not, but I do think we should take a look at, do we want to propose trying to increase it to take advantage of being able to get more of the state match than what we currently get. If I've done the math right, I think we would go from having about $500,000 a year available between the town side and the state side to possibly having $2 million. where we could then go over to Pine Hill Road and do some of those projects over there that are waiting to be done. Okay,
Yeah, Kathy, I think it's really critically important to get the math right.
yeah,
To figure out, okay, what, at the end of the day, if we go to 3%, what impact does that have on their average tax bill? And also, what would we project as to the total annual amount? Because I think you're right. I think it's a significant number. And you know what? These types of funds have been used for really, long lasting projects in town, which are critically important.
Yep. I mean, there's definitely a school of thought that thinks that we shouldn't have it, that the things that get spent on are things that we should never have done. But there's certainly a group that thinks that we have used the money very well. So I know if you take a look at the 84 Main Street, boy, does that place look nice right now.
Hey, Kathy, it'd be
And
interesting.
also, you take a look at the golf course. It looks great as a golf course. I don't think it would look as nice as a condominium complex.
Yeah, but we didn't use CPA money for that. If we'd had this kind of money I'm talking about, we could have.
We didn't use it to buy it. We
We
used
used-
it to remodel it.
Right.
We did use some, yeah, a good chunk actually.
Yeah, I mean, if by my calculation, we switch to 3, we go from a 29% gross up to a 41% gross up.
Again, if we're trying to find money from other sources besides real estate taxes, which we've said we want to, that's why we wanted to do the mills tax. This is a way to do it. You end up with the state giving us more than 3 times. So, if the average, let's just say I'm right about $100 being the average surcharge right now. So, John, that would be easy to compute. It's 300 instead of 100. But if you've got a $10,000 tax bill, it's kind of like my mills tax argument. Does another $200 make a difference to you? I don't know the answer to that. It probably would to some, but maybe not to the majority. I don't know. But I still think, you put it on the table so that we can at least say, again, this is the way to generate more revenue for the town from outside sources. Okay.
Yeah. I think especially if you could find things that the town maybe would have paid with the general fund.
All right, so no one's saying not do this one. Okay. All right, the next one is one that we talked about a couple times.
Kathy, just one question. I'm sorry, out of curiosity, and I don't know if you know the answer or if anyone, including Tim Litt, but would that be a majority vote at town meeting to go from 1% to 3%?
It would be a ballot vote. You'd have to pass it at town meeting first. I don't know. I would think it's majority at town
Okay.
meeting. And
Or
then, then you'd have to go to ballot to increase it.
Okay.
It'd be a 2-pronged vote. Okay. And I can tell you though, if this gives you any comfort, when the vote took place last time, it was close. It was like 51-49 against. So it wasn't a landslide to not do the 3%. It was close. And then they went back and reduced it to 1%, then it passed. All right. Okay, next one is we have seen budgets where we have questioned in-state travel, conference attendance, et cetera, especially during COVID, right? We questioned that from Board of Health. We questioned for several departments. So a couple of you wanted to go back and look at this and maybe try to find a way to be more consistent and make sure we really are using these funds wisely.
I would agree with this. I mean, it seems kind of old-fashioned. There are many ways to learn. You can learn online, you can learn locally. Sometimes it's necessary.
Especially now.
I would hope that the department heads that we have hired understand the significance of misspending. I don't know. Are you looking for advisory to have sort of a an additional level of review before the expenses are incurred?
I don't know where this ends up. I don't, so John, I know where you're going and I appreciate what you're saying here, which is, we need to let departments be responsible for their budgets and not necessarily nitpick every dollar that they spend, that we should have faith that they are spending money prudently and making the right decisions. So I think if we could find a balance between not doing that, but basically making sure there's at least a overall policy as far as when it's appropriate to travel.
Yeah, Kathy, I'm speaking without any knowledge. Are we aware of past, or have there been past abuses that we are aware of? I mean, I am not, but maybe others are.
John, I mean, I support looking at this. I don't know where, again, similar to my comments on other things, I don't know where it's going to land, but I would say, I agree with you. We need to let department heads run their budgets, but I also think regardless whether you're in the public or private sector, times have changed in terms of how people are, to Tim Martell's point, how people are getting their continuing education, if that's required for professional licensure, and just making sure that we're getting the most bang for the buck for conferences, and we're not just going to things because we've gone to them for 20 years.
Oh, I agree 100% with that, Jason. I agree. I mean, travel costs in my business have crashed almost down to nothing, and everything has become much more geographically amenable to my practice. So I have to assume it's across the board.
Yep. So I think that's why this is timely, John, because the world really has changed, and probably now has changed in part permanently. Look how many businesses have decided to either continue to work at home, do some type of hybrid, give people choices. So I think this is a real timely thing to look at, given the world we are now living in, and given probably the long-lasting impact of the pandemic as far as how people go about their business.
I agree with that 100% in terms of that type of review, given the new world that we now find ourselves in.
I think for me too, John, it seems inconsistent department by department. And I think it almost maybe needs to be centralized, like a tuition reimbursement program where people, kind of do an application to get the funds, to do certain continuing education.
When you say centralized, Andrew, you're saying centralized with one department, one board, one committee?
Yeah, like personnel board or selectmen or something like that. You just apply for.
I think that would be hard to do given the structure of the town, where you've got.
I don't know if I'm wrong.
That they would probably feel that's not appropriate to have, for example, the BOS tell that board how they're going to travel. I mean,
there's also a strong argument to be made that travel face-to-face can't be beat, and you can talk about online connections, but in academics, we always travel to meetings, and you're turned on by that casual conversation that you won't get online. I think there's a lot of value in this kind of travel and conference attendance.
So Judy, that is a excellent point. So we'll talk about it all. Right, but we're just trying to right now agree that we're going to look at this stuff. We're not trying to decide anything tonight. We're just trying to agree we're going to look at it further. Okay. All right. The next one is one that we also dealt with a little bit in fiscal year that we just finished during our budget season. So for those accounting types on this committee, if you take a look at the Southborough accounting system, which is actually quite complicated. It's government accounting. It's got lots of nuances in it. There is some illogic into where some expenses land. For example, you may recall that Board of Health had their cell phones in their budget, and then at the very end, they got them moved out until the budget where everybody else is. Water costs were in various budgets where every other utility was in one separate budget 159 that John Parent controls. So at the end of the year, Chelsea Malinowski led the effort to get all the water moved to one budget. They moved cell phones over. So we probably just need, and this is maybe one of the more minor ones. We need to probably look at this a little bit more to see if there's some more things we should do that allow us to make a better decision. For example, a couple of you pointed out, the benefits, the healthcare costs, they're not in the department budget. So you get a little bit of a skewed look at a budget when you don't include the fully loaded cost of a person. So it looks like it's lower than it really is because it's off to the side and a different one big budget with all the benefits in it. So it's very hard to really look at, and understand what the true cost of a department is because you've got something there that's really big and missing. So that's the type of thing we're talking about there. So I think it's probably worthwhile to look at. We'll see how much time we're going to spend on it as far as trying to, see what Carla has to say too. She'll have an opinion on this. So there's that one. The next one is headcount. So we discussed, there was a lot of discussion this year about headcount. Some people were concerned about, what the Board of Health was doing. Some people were concerned about what adding another person for the IT department was going to do. There was one person who proposed, well, if you're going to do that, you need to cut somebody else. So we have a net zero add. The Board of Selectmen the year before last had taken a vote to not add any new people in fiscal year 22. And of course we did, regardless of that. So this one's tricky, but there's a couple of you that wanted to look at this as far as maybe at least recommending a policy going forward to at least at the minimum, make sure people are aware of what the real cost is of hiring a person, because not many people really understand that when you hire a person for $50,000, the real cost is probably $100,000. But if they, live a long life, have a spouse, and they get paid out benefits. Do you know, I heard the other day that some kids that are born today, half of them are going to live to be 103 years old. So if someone retires when they're 58 and we pay health insurance and we pay pensions until they're 100, you're going to pay that out for more years than they actually worked. So I think we definitely should look at this in a way that makes sense because it's just going to continue to go up. Federal government's going to have the same problem too. So this is something I think we should look at. And at the same time, we can go back and look at OPEB closer. We started talking about this year, but we really never went back to it as far as where we really stand and understand where that's going to as far as OPEB and our pension liability. So anyone have an issue with looking at least the philosophy of adding more people? Jason, you're okay?
Oh, I'm strongly supportive of it based on my prior comments. Yeah.
I started with you. So if you say no, then we'll just move on. Okay. So anybody vehemently opposed to this? And Judy, I know you're going to maybe not support delving into this, but you'll have your say.
Kathy, in terms of the scope, where are we going to look at costs of additional employees or the current staffing into whether or not the town has a surplus of full-time employees? I think those are two different inquiries. Is this bulleted item all inclusive or not?
Of the 10 that are listed here, John, I don't have a really good idea of what we're going to agree to do to approach this one.
Jason, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, because they do tend to go hand in hand, do they not?
We do, yeah. I mean, I think it starts with education, right? It's, using Kathy's 100,000 example, right? Is that the right starting point, right? Is that really what it costs? But I think it's the cost to have someone on the payroll now, the cost of someone in 20 years. You remember, like what the cost of promotion is. Like there's all sorts of things that go into this. That I think just as long as people are aware of what these things cost, it's going to be important.
Yeah, and I wasn't singling you out. I mean, you've talked about it a number of times, so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's where any study around it would go. And obviously it's up to a much broader group to make decisions on, we understand the cost, but we're just going to move forward, or, maybe we need to pause here and rejigger some things. But it goes, I don't know which item we were talking about, before here, it goes to our form of town government. we have so many different elected boards and appointing authorities with certain provisions that it's very hard to kind of maximize the benefit of certain things because of that, because it really requires true collaboration. And obviously those seats turn over as well, right? You can't guarantee that anyone's going to be in any of those seats, you know, greater than a 3-year time period or whatever, or 5 years, depending upon the board.
So Judy, I don't think we intend to go to a department and say, we think you've got one too many people. That's not what we're trying to do here. I think certainly the education of the departments as far as what the real costs of employees are, you know, encouraging more automation when it's appropriate. Looking at when someone retires, is that someone that needs to be replaced or not, or maybe part-time. Continuing to encourage sharing of admins that started this past year. So there's ways to approach this, I think, without doing something that is perceived as not in our bailiwick. You know, we dealt very strongly with Board of Health this year, and we saw very clearly how an independent board looks at their role, right? So we saw it. So we're not trying to tell someone exactly what their department should look like. They know more about it than we do. We don't know enough to make that decision, but we do need to, I think, continue to emphasize how costly an employee is, the total cost, the full loaded cost when you include all the benefits.
Well, respectfully, Kathy, I'm not sure I agree with that, because like when I'm making a decision on my business as to whether or not there's a need to hire an additional person, before I even get to that decision, I need to understand the composition of the workforce as it exists in order to make that decision. So I'm not sure you can divorce it. And again, maybe I just am having a difficult time in terms of application in the public sector, but I'm not sure that, you know, there's that clear division between those two inquiries.
And I think you're, no, I think John's absolutely right here. Like, but I think you have to start with an educational campaign of what are the true numbers here? Because if no one is spooked by the numbers, then there's no need to go look under the hood. But my guess is people are going to be really spooked when they see what some of these things look like. And obviously, all of us may have a different view as people that may be taxpayers of the town of Southborough for another year, 5 years, 10 years, or 50 years, right? In what that could do.
Well, you definitely should be spooked by what I just said about people being born today are going to live, half of them will live to be 103. So let's say you retire when you're 58 and you started working here when you're 25. So you work 33 years and then you live to be 103. So that's another 45 years. So you worked 33 years, but yet you got a pension and retirement benefits for 45. I mean, the numbers to fund that have got to be huge, huge.
Yes, but you want people who expect to get pensions. This is part of work life, that what you don't get in your paycheck, you get in these benefits afterwards. And it's easy enough for us to say, there's too many after, I don't know, I don't have your language, Kathy, but there's too many after someone retires, it costs too much. I know what the state gives to state employees. And that's part of the reason that we take those jobs. We know, we're in academics, we're going to get tenure. We're going to have a pension that lasts afterwards. I didn't care about pension when I was that age, but nonetheless, that's part of the benefit. And so we have to remember that.
If it took more money than you could afford to pay in real estate taxes to fund this, would you still say what you're saying? I mean, you know, the federal government's got the same problem. They're going to, you know, they've had it for a long time. It's here today, and it's going to get bigger. So how much money are you willing to pay to fund these? Are you willing to break your bank to be able to do this? I don't know. Maybe some people are, but I bet a lot of people aren't. So I think we've at least got to look at this and, you know, eyes open going forward as far as what adding a person. So Judy, we're talking about adding people more than necessarily cutting, you know.
No, I understand that.
So the first thing
And
you
I
do,
understand what we're
right?
talking
I mean,
about
that,
here.
before you cut, you try to avoid adding, which Jason tried very hard this year to emphasize as far as adding people. You know, we haven't added them yet. Why? You know, let's at least stop adding.
Kathy, what I would like to see is going forward for the budget process is anytime somebody's looking to add new hours or a new resource, it really needs to be calculated more from a strategic initiative with a long-term forecast. Show us what that resource is going to cost, plus what the department's going to look like over time. Because I think one of the issues we had with the addition of the police officers, which were partial, and the addition of the Board of Health looking at the money for the CARES Act, is we didn't show that, yeah, they're going up, whatever it was, 30%. It's really going up 100 and something next year when the CARES Act funding disappears, or the police officers who were, 50% of the cost in 1 year. So I think we should set up a process where anything new, I want to see a 3-year forecasted budget instead of just a 1 year.
I'd say 5 years.
I'd say, if you want to think that way, I'd say 20 years. How long is somebody staying the?
He's getting a little sketchy as far as trying to project out that far, but
Yeah, I mean, well, it's a long-term commitment.
Yeah, because I think we keep getting surprised by things. Oh, this person now jumped grades, and this person got a promotion, and we added this person, but it's only half of it, and then we get surprised with 7, 8, 9, 10% increases year over year. I think it would be good to know, at least an idea of that when we approved it.
Alrighty. The last one is pilot payments, mostly focused on the 2 private schools. So we know what got accomplished this year. I haven't talked to Marty since he announced what he had achieved with each school. So I don't know what he thinks about what's left to be done. So there's a piece that's missing here. We need to understand where he thinks it is. But we have talked about other ways to approach this. Andrew Pfaff has worked on a couple things as far as things that he thinks might work, which is basically finding ways to carve out the cost of services and make people pay for the services separately from the taxes. So you reduce the real estate taxes and have the fee charge, for example, wastewater. So does anyone have an appetite to, and this is something we'd have to work with the board, this is Board of Selectmen's role to deal with the schools. Is there anyone that's going to appetite to work with the Board of Selectmen to continue these discussions with the schools? Or do you think that what Marty achieved this year should end the discussion with 2 schools?
I think they should be at a higher commitment. That's just my opinion.
So you think the discussion should continue?
Yep.
Okay. Tim?
Yeah, I do.
That
I just
all of you before is
go ahead.
go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just gonna say I don't know what kind of leg we have to stand on with the schools. But
The
Not much of a legal
that
leg.
the approach that at least moderately.
Breaking up a little bit, John.
John, I definitely want to hear what you've got to say, given your prior involvement. So can you go again?
I think I've said
can't hear you,
the
John.
way that I found to deal with. Is that better, Tim?
So John, you're just going in and out. So if you can hear us, we're not hearing you.
Hey, Tim, is this better now?
Keep going. You're breaking up
How
a
about
lot,
now?
John. That's better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
What to this committee and dealing with these private schools for over 7 years is generally an appetite, and you certainly get wet it for their contributions to focus on a particular capital item.
Mm.
I think you get more
Exactly what they did this
as
year.
opposed to having acknowledge a responsibility for an annual
Which is exactly what happened this year. So John, if you were going to continue on advisory, would you have an appetite to wanting to see these discussions continue with the schools?
Continue. I'm not satisfied with what the result has been this year, and then move on.
So I just don't know how Marty left it. Do the schools think that, they're done? Or do they not think that? I don't know. I've always said, I used to sit on a private school board, and I actually brought it up to these private school boards are pretty big. They've also each got a separate finance committee. So I've always thought that the better way to approach the schools is to deal with the board and not deal with the CFO and the headmaster, which is what we've been doing for years. I think that the board would be more receptive to a discussion. They come from different towns all over. They're usually parents of school children that are in school at that time. They're usually on the board for 3 years and they rotate. But I do think that the better approach would be to sit down with the finance committee first, and then ask to make a presentation to the entire board. I actually think we would have possibly had a better result if we had done that, but they didn't. So that's my take on it. I wish they would approach this a little bit differently than they have as far as who they deal with. When I did it, I had parents go, "Oh, I didn't know that." And my school has a great relationship with the town it's in. They share, there's more than one thing to do this. They share facilities, they share programs. And it really did open up the eyes of the people around the table as far as this. They didn't really understand it. And once they understood it, they wanted to do more than what they were doing. So.
Yeah, Kathy, I think my view on this is that I'd love to see more. I'd love to see if there's a way to get sort of this public-private sort of investment. You likely have some big capital items coming in the next few years that will benefit, I think, all members of the community if done right, and thinking through some of that. But I'm also cognizant of the role that the Board of Selectmen have, and none of us were in the room like Mr. Healy was, and I know Mr. Rooney's sat in on those conversations before. So I'm hesitant to recommend doing anything without knowing how those conversations go, but I obviously know that a meeting like this is not always the right forum for those sorts of conversations. So my caution is I think we should encourage further dialogue, but we should tread lightly and stay kind of in our swim lane. I think there's definitely some residents in the community that certainly are outspoken on the issue and continue to drive that, but we don't know what we don't know. And I, again, feel like this is borderline outside of our responsibilities, the advisory committee.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't like the result, but I don't know how much we can do.
Kathy, I kind of agree with Jason. I think certainly usage fees and some of those strategies that we've talked about are within our bailiwick. So I think there's a collaboration in terms of how we handle nonprofits and usage fees that we need to have with the Board of Selectmen. But so maybe that's where the interaction.
Okay. All right. So it looks like we've got pretty good agreement that 1 through 9 are things that we should go further with.
Well, I think 10 is there because I think we need to talk. I want to talk about the usage fees.
Okay. And then 10 carefully. Okay. Without being perceived as exceeding our jurisdiction, but trying to be helpful to the Board of Selectmen is what I was trying to get to there. See if we can help them with, being a little bit more creative going forward.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now let me jump down to other things that I think we should monitor.
Hey, Kathy, before you do that, could I maybe add an item to the list? It's it probably underlies all of the items, is that I think we need, and I think this is an advisory role in conjunction with selectmen, in conjunction with other committees, but just a group, whether it's a committee or not, that focuses on raising revenue, increasing revenue. making sure we're doing everything relative to, the business side of the ledger. I mean, it's such an amorphous objective, but, each year the cost of municipal services are going to increase. That's a given. If the revenues do not continue to increase, then you know what? It directly impacts every taxpayer in town. So I don't know if it's a group, the focus group, or a committee that just takes a look at revenue generating opportunities, and just exhaust that. And I'll just stand down now to see if people agree or disagree. But I do think it's a really important function immediately to undertake.
Yeah, I think that dovetails with the conversations we've had and selectmen have had in terms of grant writers or grant, committee, people that are actively searching for grants plus other revenue opportunities. I think you could bundle it together to, the revenue generation group.
Well, I'd say that at this point, the only group that has really tried to focus on this is advisory. I know of no conversations where people are saying, where can we generate other revenue? We pushed the meals tax. We pushed the fee review. So it's something that certainly should be done, and it's not being done as far as I know. It's just not a focus. So John, I totally agree with you. The more we can find from other sources, then the less pressure on the real estate taxes. Because if not, remember the way it works. You have your budget, you subtract local revenue and local aid, and then what's left over gets paid by real estate taxes. So it's always your fallback. You'll just continue to raise real estate taxes to pay for what the other two don't. And if they don't rise or rise as fast as your expenses go, then you put even more pressure on those real estate taxes. So I am certainly all for trying to have a more formal approach to trying to look for opportunities to generate revenue, grants, etc.
Kathy, I don't know if another one we want to get into and throw into that bucket is recreational marijuana.
Well, I brought it up last year. I wanted to see the look on anybody's face, and I saw no one that looked devastated when I did it. It would be a hard sell, but there is nothing that would generate the revenue that would. I mean, it dwarfs anything else you can think of. I can't think of any other thing besides putting a casino in Southborough that would generate. If I've got my numbers right, Hudson generates 7 figures, well into 7 figures. We get $50,000 from the medical place. So I'm all for that. You're going to have a thick skin to do this.
Yeah, I can tell you, in knowing the history in terms of the existing business in town, that was not received with wide open arms by a large part of the population.
But John, it didn't lose by a lot. I went back and looked at the vote. It didn't lose by a lot. It's what, low 50s to high 40s was the vote.
Yeah, I think, if you go either direction of Route 9 now, you pass, a half dozen places, I feel. I don't know if the times have changed. It's worth looking again, but.
Yeah, so that may be true. It may be, no pun intended, but they may be cannibalizing. There's one opening in Framingham right now. I mean, it's a big business. There's no doubt about it. And can we say that there's no downside to at least looking at it again? I don't know. Maybe we can. We'd have to certainly, make it clear we want it in the right place, way away from kids and schools and whatever. But if you guys have the appetite for this, I'm all for it. I just didn't, I couldn't tell when I brought it up whether nobody really said a lot whether you'd be willing to do this.
Well, Kathy, if you could convince Park Central to convert into a giant marijuana dispensary, you would be a hero.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the biggest item in order to tackle this with any degree of hope for success is to identify first the location, Kathy.
Yep.
That to me was the driver, if you will,
Yep.
on both the support and opposition.
Yep.
So obviously they're going to, look on the would be the east side of Route 9 where EMC used to be, where there really are not neighborhoods. I think if you were able to find a location, an available location, then I think you'd be a little bit more, it would be better received, if you will, than the last time.
And I guess I think about this a little more broadly, is why are we picking one sector? I think EDC is certainly going to now shift their focus, I hope, to Route 9. And I think if Route 9 is done correctly, not only the potential that could be built there from a real estate perspective, generating, obviously shifting the burden of the tax rate, plus if we have sewer out there as opposed to septic, the amount of restaurants that could potentially go in there with our new meals tax, I think you're going to see a much broader support, hopefully, for something like that. Now, if this one topic that Andrew raised is part of that equation, I think that, that's up to people to voice their opinions about. But I like 11, the way 11 is worded, and potentially you form a subcommittee of advisory to start. And I think you investigate, 12 could be something that someone wants to look at as part of that subcommittee. But I think it's got to be broader, and and explore all things and see what's viable, like throw darts at a wall, see what sticks and see what falls off. And then figure out the right groups to advance those with based on the recommendations.
The minimum, I think we should do some research and really see what we're talking about revenue wise. Because what if I'm off by, a factor of 4 or 5, then it's not quite as exciting, right? To go through what you're going to have to go through to get that passed. Okay, so what I did, Jason, is I added it to 11.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so before I go on to just things that we need to monitor that are already ongoing, is there anything else to add to this list as far as topics that we want to discuss over our non-budget period?
There were, just quickly, briefly, Kathy, there were a lot of complaints by various parents about the timing of town meeting, even though people understood that there were conflicts and restrictions because of COVID.
Yep.
I know that we'll be probably moving back to a March schedule, but I think there's a lesson to be learned there and to be shared with the selectmen.
I think everybody noticed there was not a lot of young parents at the town meeting because they were doing things with their children that day. So right now, the expectation is we go back to the date that's in the bylaw now, which is the last Saturday in March.
And I think the fall will be a good experiment, right? Because we'll be probably back to a weeknight unless they choose to do it on a weekend. Because I think if you do it on the weekend, even if it's indoors in the fall, you're gonna have the same issues that Tim's highlighting. So, if there is a fall town meeting, you may be able to see what the weeknight turnout is. And obviously it's all topic based too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Jason. I mean, if the fall town meeting has got a hot topic, if you will, that will tend to generate more attendance versus just your annual meeting.
Well, I think there's quite a few hot topics. So this is what I think's on the list right now. Downtown initiative, possibly something to do with Board of Health, structure, budget, et cetera. Our article, that might not be scintillating, but it will be there. South Union, that'll bring some people out. Possibly increasing the CPA surtax, that'll bring some people out. Noise bylaw, Sam thinks they're going to have the noise bylaw done by that. I don't see how, but I put it on here because he says, oh, it could happen. Capital issues, if we end up being able at the fall town meeting to be ready to propose closing a school, that'll bring a lot of people out. So there definitely could be some hot topics on the fall town meeting for sure.
There are some easy things we can do though, Kathy. Turning it into a blackout date. There's no reason why rec can't close fields. There's no reason why the schools can't close gyms. All sorts of
fall one or for the March one.
All of them moving forward. There's no reason why the town is competing against itself during town meeting. You never know when you know, the schools, excuse me, the school schedule functions well in advance, right? And so it would behoove us, for example, in the fall, let's not, you know, if there's a ski trip or if there's some kind of band concert, let's not create conflicts for parents who might want to come to town meeting. And it would be really easy to schedule something, particularly for special town meetings, to schedule something that's in the clear and to tell the departments, don't put anything on top of this.
Because you know, the reason we've got the last Saturday March is because the parents of young kids that do recreational stuff, that's what they wanted. They led the charge to change it to the last Saturday in March because they hadn't started the spring sports yet.
Well, even there, you would have to go to the lacrosse leagues and say, you know what, I know your practice starts the second to last week of March. They usually go to the St. Mark's Cage. Tell them, you know what, on this day, nothing.
Okay. All right. So I put it on there. Recommendations on town meeting date.
Yeah, it's pretty simple because it's within the town's control.
Yep.
And then you wouldn't have any parents saying they couldn't come because they didn't have, you know, XYZ.
Yeah, Tim, I would say it should be simple.
Well, I agree with everything Tim said, and it hopefully would create more engagement. If I could tell you some of the text messages I got during town meeting from parents that were crowded on other fields because they had moved stuff from Neary, I don't think anyone really gets what we do at town meeting, to be completely honest. And it was a little baffling, some of the messages I got of how could the town move everything over to this complex or that complex? How could this town meeting be so important? That was the gist of some of the messages I got. So that's where we're working with. Right, wrong, or indifferent, just throw that out there.
That's depressing. Okay, so Tim, it's on there.
Well, I think what Jason just said brings up another concept that I don't think we get into too, is representative town meeting. But that's another can of worms.
Yeah, good luck with that, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
You know what you get. What you
with
get
the amount of
into
people that
that,
show up.
what you get into. You know what, I John, I know you were a proponent of this back in the day. And when I was on the town meeting review committee, we did look at that. And one of the things that we discovered was that you run into massive quorum problems because the representatives don't show up. They put themselves on the ballot, they get elected, and they don't show up. And then you're stuck because you can't bring anybody else to fill the quorum. It becomes a real problem.
I forgot you were on the town meeting committee, Tim. That's helpful.
Tim, the only part with that is with the new emergency, you were allowed to do it on Zoom.
I have a client who is also the moderator for one of the towns close to us, and he's actually so I've got a client, and then my client deals with this person, so I deal with him through my client. And he said, "Oh, so and so told me that you are part of Southborough's advisory committee." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Can we talk?" And what he wanted to talk about was doing town meeting, by Zoom, by internet voting and stuff. They're focused on it. This is a pretty big town. It's close to us. So they're really into trying to convert their town meeting to one that you can attend remotely.
Yeah, Kathy, it's not creating a new wheel. There are a number of towns that do it and a number of countries that for their political election. So it can be done. The security issue is the main issue. I did explain that as continue down that road. It may be, you know what, now that we all have experience with remote learning / working, it may be, you know what, much more topical now.
Yeah, you're right. This has truly taught us that we can do things we didn't think we could do. Think as the pandemic was 20 years ago, what would we have done? You didn't have the internet, you didn't have all this stuff. So
it's easy to meet via Zoom for 7 people, right? For 200 people. I promise you, they will not be engaged. They won't pay attention. They'll have no clue what's going on, and then they'll just click yes or no. We would really need to think about that. Is that what we want from our voters?
I've been to some pretty big parties by Zoom where they had a couple hundred people.
I guess the objective, Tim, would be to increase residential participation and not just have 125 people make the decisions on behalf of the entire town. So if the objective is increased participation did not materialize, then I'm not sure why we even just think about it.
Well, it would be quantity versus quality.
That's
true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do
But
you want
you're not
100? Go ahead, John.
Yeah, you also assume that the 125 are all paying attention and are as engaged because they are in
Right.
person as opposed to on a video screen. I hear you, man. I absolutely hear you.
That was not a representative group at town meeting at all. That definitely skewed older. Okay, so we've got our list there. Let me just run through the other matters to monitor and make sure I've got all those on there. So the first one was, we asked the town, Brian and his group, to do a fee review. They did. We heard the results. There were a couple that they thought should be increased. So I thought we should probably at least follow up and make sure that what was supposed to be done did get done. And I would think that what we want to also do is make sure this gets done on a regular basis, not once every, 10 years. I don't know why you wouldn't do this, every year to make sure that fees are-
What type of fees are you talking about?
Permit fees, John, building permit fees,
Okay.
fees and your smoke alarm, you go to, there's a false alarm, whatever.
Yeah.
So when you have your smoke alarm inspected. So there's a
So
lot.
basically, inspectional fees we're talking about.
Yeah, that type. Anything that is, a fee that you got to pay the town for something that either you're being penalized for or because you've got to get permission to do something.
Kathy, you want to put that under the revenue generating opportunity one? I mean, I'd like to see that we give areas, maybe business or different revenue generating departments goals.
Give them
Your
what?
budget.
Give them what?
Goals. Like if your expenses are going up 3%, you should try to generate fees that are going up equally.
But of course, every department can't do that.
No, but the ones that can, I'm saying.
Like, what's an example, Andrew?
Building department. If the inspection people are going up 5% in salary, maybe we don't adjust the fees every year, but we try to keep, it's kind of a cost allocation, right? So we try to keep the revenue generated for the inspections that they're doing growing at the same rate as which the salaries and benefits are.
I just don't know that the two are directly connected.
Well, I mean, Board of Health, how many times did they say that that's direct, right?
Yeah, but I didn't think that made a lot of logical sense as far as what they were saying there too.
Yeah, like a building permit, as an example, is based on the cost of the project.
Yep.
So I know there's large projects in town this year. I'm sure if Lori Lavoli had a goal, she'd be blowing it out. She'd be blowing it out of the water, right? Based on some of the numbers that were in the last budget package. So I wouldn't use the word goal, Andrew, but I would find a way to make it so that you're maintaining a level fee structure with other communities and in conjunction with the cost to deliver those. Now, some are capped, though, by statute. Like, we can't charge more than X dollars per this in certain fields, but the ones that we do have some leeway on, we have to at least make sure we don't forget to look at them for another 16 years, like one department.
Okay, so I said, make sure recurring fees are being reviewed, I'm gonna put regularly there, and are at market compared to other Mass towns.
At market or one of the things that I'm concerned about is the ones that we increased this year, we put them at like the median rate. So, almost immediately we're not at the top. You know, you increase it and then you leave it steady for a while, right?
So we can discuss, what we mean by market. Do we want to go to the top? Do you want to push it as much as you can, or do you want to stay somewhere in the middle? So
Put it in that top quartile, right?
people want to do business with us. Okay. All right. Okay. Other matters to monitor. So I'm going to move the fee. The fee review has been moved. Okay. So, we worked very hard to get the mills tax implemented. It was, flew right through town meeting.
Right.
I just want to make sure now that I see no reason why it shouldn't be effective January 1st. Does anyone disagree with that statement? I mean, now I know there was.
Unless COVID-20 comes.
Say that what? Say it again?
Said unless COVID-20 comes.
Well, okay, so assuming that things continue to progress on the path they are right now, which is looking pretty positive for Massachusetts, right? We've got a great vaccination rate in this state, and we definitely have a good one here. Traffic is definitely picking up. Restaurants are open for business and are trying to get back to what they were. So I just don't see any reason why this is not totally reasonable to encourage the Board of Selectmen to make sure we're ready for January 1st. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, downtown initiative bylaw. Obviously, we don't have a direct stake in that, but that is one of the primary reasons that they want to have the fall town meeting. So I had a long talk with Claire about it today. Then I talked to others, and depending on who you talk to, you get lots of different answers. So Claire thinks we're a long way away from bringing this forth in a manner that makes sense, where you've got the planning board and Board of Selectmen on board. Sam Stivers believes that there are 3 things that need to be changed before it's going to go forward. So they're very specific things as far as height of the building, amount of floor space. So he seems to be more positive, Claire, than you do as far as it's being able to get done. He thinks the planning board he thinks the Board of Selectmen and the planning board are going to be able to come to an agreement on this. Right. So assuming that we all think something should probably be done. I know, Tim, you've got some issues with some of the details. I went to Carlisle the other day. I've never been in downtown Carlisle. It is the cutest thing. And I thought, boy, I really wish Southport looked a little bit more like this. So I still think that, you're not going to get perfection. You can strive for it, but you're not going to get there. And so we really, knowing that, we should try to do the best we can and get this brought forward. So anything we can do to encourage it, I think would be helpful.
Yeah, I'd also take a look at Hudson, Kathy. I mean, when I moved in here, it was really an eyesore, but they've done some amazing things in downtown Hudson.
There's lots of examples of really cute towns that the downtown looks great. Ours looks really good until you get down to, the bottom part of it. Yeah. So anyone disagree that we should at least support the efforts that are being made to bring this to town meeting in the fall? So no one's saying no. Tim Martell's not saying no, although he's muted. So if you're talking, Tim, we can't hear you. All right, so I'm going to keep going.
I'm not saying no, Kathy, sorry.
Okay. All right. I think we obviously know why we need to monitor what's going on with the IT department staffing. I've got more to say about that when I get to the personnel board meeting that Jason and I went to yesterday. So I don't see any disagreement that we need to continue to monitor how that department is staffed. Every day we are hearing more and more and more and more about what's going on with all kinds of bad stuff in the cyber world. I heard today too, insurance companies are starting to cancel policies that have cyber insurance in them. They're starting to balk at being responsible for paying anything. So we may not end up with any insurance soon too, either, to cover anything. Okay, the next one is, we know we have spent a lot of time talking about understanding and possibly changing the vacation and or sick time accrual and carryover policies for the town. So that was the main reason Jason and I went to the personnel board meetings. We're going to talk about that more in a minute, but I think that we definitely should continue to monitor what's going on there. Personnel board is working on this. So our job, I think now is just to keep track of what's going on. So they're working on
Kathy,
it.
you're also going to look at those employees that are contract employees with unions. Is that part of this examination?
SAP, so the personnel board won't do that because that's not under their jurisdiction. However, the meeting yesterday was really informative. Betsy Rosenblum ran a really good meeting yesterday. So she's read all the union contracts. You know, she's a lawyer. And she knows what's in them. And she explained to everybody that now we're only talking the town side. We're not talking the schools yet. She did not look at the school contracts. So she's talking about the 4 that the town side has. And she said 3 of the 4 of them have exactly the same language that's in the SAP. So there's a lot of consistency with what's there today. I would think our goal, she turned to Jason and said, Jason, are you going to handle the unions? Which I think surprised him. But anyway, so no, they don't plan on handling the union side of this, but one would think that once they come to their decision, any changes that we'd want, then those that deal with the union contracts, which is mainly Mr. Purple, to hopefully entertain keeping everything consistent. So it'd really be up to him, I think, to carry out the changes to the union contracts.
So, and I think the only thing to add to that is it is all the union contracts, at least that are handled by the town side, not the school side, are up for negotiation in this fiscal year.
Yep. So we're going to come back to this one, talk just a minute more detail. So I just want to kind of say that's one I think we definitely should continue to monitor till it's done. The next one obviously is what's going to happen to the South Union School. We know that the bidder has retracted its bid, so we have no bids now. So I think the BOS is probably going to rethink this from beginning, and maybe we'll have something ready for fall town meeting, but who knows? But keep track
Kathy,
of it.
why don't you let Andrew give an update on an initiative he'll be part of if the Board of Selectmen are so inclined.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Sure. So between capital planning and SHOPC, we're working on a charge for South Union Affordable Housing Subcommittee of SHOPC that would investigate, conversion of South Union to affordable housing or market rate, with some affordable housing, plus looking at that Chapter 30A MBTA community multifamily by right legislature that came out earlier in January, which if we, by some period at which the state has not told us, we do not have an area within half a mile of the train station designated as multifamily by right, we can lose our ability to do MassWorks grants and some other state funded grant programs. So we're going to look and see whether or not that might be feasible for South Union if the selectmen so choose to pick up the charge.
So Andrew, are you saying that SHOPC is forming a subcommittee to do this?
That's the idea.
Okay, so this is being proposed to the Board of Selectmen to do?
Correct. We're working on the charge now, but it would be 2 members of SHOPC, 2 members of capital planning, and a member of planning board.
Excellent. Okay, so we just need to be kept posted on this one. We're on the sidelines on this and just going to watch what happens and then see what we think.
Hey, Andrew, how many acres are there?
It depends on who you ask. Technically on the assessor's website, it's 3.00, but if you actually look it up on and map it out on GIS, it's about 4.2. So it needs to be surveyed, but it's about 4.2.
Thanks.
And it's in that zoning area that technically would be half-acre lots if you went that way.
Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, the last one again to monitor. So remember there is a capital planning committee that Jason and Andrew are on, but then there's separately a capital planning committee school research subcommittee, not to be confused with the capital committee of the school committee. So the 3 people that are on the capital planning committee school research subcommittee are Jason, myself, and Katura Martin, who's on the school committee. She's a school committee representative. And then the superintendent, Greg Martineau, and Keith Lavoy have also been appointed to work with us. So there's basically 5 people that have been there from the day one that are still working on this. So there again, we just need to monitor what that subcommittee is doing, which we should not have a hard time doing. You got 2 people that can report to you and see where it ends up. I think it's going to probably start accelerating. It's been a little bit inactive the last couple of months to allow the schools to get back on their feet. But I think that this work will start accelerating pretty soon. But I've got Jason here to either say yay or nay if he agrees with that.
I'm sorry, Kathy. This is a committee?
Yes, it's a subcommittee. It's an official committee. So what happened? So when I resigned from Capital Planning Committee because of our quorum issue, I automatically resigned from that one too, because I got appointed through being on the Capital Planning Committee. So then what Capital Planning Committee did, they asked the Board of Selectmen to change the charge for this to appoint an advisory liaison, which was me. So that's how I came off and came back on. So it's still the same 3 people, or same 5 people that were there from day one, but just a little bit circuitously as far as how I've ended up back on it. So not having Article 33 approved had a couple silver linings in it, because this is a temporary committee. Once this decision gets made, there will probably be a building committee formed, whatever. So this committee, once it will do its job pretty soon, I think, as far as what it's intended to do, and then probably be disbanded. And so the fact that it's temporary allows advisory to be on it, right? If this had turned into a permanent committee, then and 32 had not been approved, we would have had a problem as far as the people that are on it. So we would have had some big issues with our advisory composition if 33 had gotten approved without 32 being approved. Okay, any other things anybody wants to add as far as things to monitor that we've dealt with, and we just need to kind of watch what's going on? And if you think of something later, let me know. We can always add to these. So this would be a working document that we can change.
Do you feel that the town is going to embrace the new reserve policy, reserve transfer policy? That we're going to be notified up front, well in advance?
I think that we'll know soon, Tim. If we end up with a ton of reserve fund transfer requests in a couple of weeks, we'll know. So I think that people have tried really hard. Jim Haggerty emailed me as soon as he knew today. He thought that he knew he was going to get the money. He just didn't realize that he couldn't directly offset his budget. So he told us right away. Chief Achilles told us about the antenna right away. We've dealt with the Board of Health. So I don't know. So I keep asking if there's any other ones out there, and the only other one I know about that's potential, and he's told us about it too, is John Parent in Budget 159, because Al Hamilton amended his budget last year by $50,000. So he's not going to need all the 50, but I think he's going to need 20, 25. He's estimated he'll be 20 or 25 short in that budget, and there's no place else to go in that budget. That budget's nothing but utilities. So he will need one. So there's one, but he's told me about it. So I'm hoping that we're not going to be surprised, but we'll see.
I think the good news on that one, Kathy, is I was part of a email chain with John and Carla, is we did get favorable guidance from the state that because of the way they had to run the HVAC at the public safety building this year for ventilation, that some of that will be eligible for funding.
Well, that's great.
So it may not eliminate the reserve fund request, but it's certainly going to mitigate it.
That's great. So good for whoever thought of that one. That's creative. So that's what we were trying to get them to do. So good for Carla and good for whoever thought of that one. So kudos. So that's good. All right. So when I talked to Jason, he didn't know that. I talked to him, I don't know, 4 weeks ago.
Just in the last less than 7 days.
Yeah. Okay, good. So
Carla asked in March, just so you understand what she's working up against. She raised it in March and got an answer in the last week.
Well, good for her to ask. So that's great. That's what we're trying to get them to do. You know, all they can say is no, right? But if you don't ask, you don't get. Okay, so again, we can change this as the summer goes on. We can add to it, subtract to it, whatever. But at least this is a starting point as far as what it looks like. Mr. Mooney, I know that you don't plan on being here unless you change your mind, which of course you're always welcome to do. I hope you know that. But I still want you to weigh in on what we're going to talk about. So you're still a very important part of this committee until June 30th.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay. All right.
One other one I was thinking about, maybe we add on to the summer agenda, is finding some kind of cadence / data for us to do ongoing monitoring of how the year is going. I know that, Brian and Carla meet with the selectmen and kind of review some of the financials. I mean, I'd love to get a monthly readout of what the expenses are versus budget and things like that, like a general ledger report. But
Well, I think all we got to do is ask for it.
yeah, I think we should, kind of set it up as an ongoing. What do we want from a monthly reporting package
We just
to
need to
monitor
spend the
things?
time to review it, which we've never really done as far as where we really are. So I agree we should be doing that, but we haven't done it. So Jason, how are you going to use the ClearGov capital module without the operating budget module? Is it just totally disconnected from it?
So it's totally disconnected, but I don't think we're going to be using it because ClearGov reneged on their verbal agreement when the town canceled the bigger package. They reneged on the pricing that Brian had gotten from them for capital. So there's nothing right now.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Effective 7/1. But I guess to Andrew's point, I think there's some great transparency in those reports. I would strongly recommend, if Mark, Brian, and Carla are open to it, that an advisory have a member that participates in that quarterly discussion that leads into the Board of Selectmen presentation. And Mark, Brian, and Carla are welcome to come do the same presentation for us, but obviously I want to be cognizant of them having to appear live 2 different nights. But maybe if they're okay with that advisory representative carrying the message back and being able to answer questions, if they were part of a deeper dialogue offline, that would certainly increase the dialogue and visibility into where we're at year to date.
Yeah, I remember seeing the package for that. I like the report, the expense report, things like that that come out from whatever the system is. But that's kind of what I was envisioning we would just get on a monthly or quarterly basis.
Well, let's be clear that the accounting system's awful, but that's government accounting. But the summaries that our town's finance team do, I think, are great to boil down what it actually means.
I added it. All right, so it's 8:40. I thought this was going to be a much quicker meeting. So let's go back to the 1 through 13 and decide what we can tonight as far as that part. We don't have to deal with every one of them, but let's at least start picking off some of them so we can get started at the next meeting, because the summer will fly by. And then it'll be, budget season will start sooner this year than it did last year. Because of the March town meeting. Okay. If we look at 1 through 13, I can tell you the one that, let's just look at the ones that are most time sensitive. I'd say 2 is so I'm going to highlight in red the ones that I think are time sensitive, see if you agree. So I think 2 is.
I'd lump 1 and 3 together into a later conversation after we know what the ARP funds are going to be.
Yeah, but I think it's very time sensitive. We got to get going on it.
Well,
So I agree that we'll leave 1 until we really understand 3.
Yeah.
Right. So, but we got to get going on 3. Like right now, that document that needs to go into the state to get that first chunk of money needs to go in right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that's time sensitive. Okay, I think 5 is time sensitive. Andrew? I mean, if she really has no money, which I don't think she does, I think we need to get our arms around that pretty quick.
I think that's important to know, but I don't know if it's not necessarily time sensitive in terms of what we can do about it. Are you thinking that we need to do something for fall town meeting surrounding that?
Not necessarily. What I'm saying is we need to get our arms around it soon, so we really know where we stand, because it still may influence some of the downtown project as far as how to finish that up.
Yeah, I mean, we could also use some of the 3 million from ARP to do the roads,
Yep.
right? So
But
we can, I
they're
mean,
not
we know we don't have enough road money, right? So that's not a computation we can do.
Well, we know we don't, we know we don't, but we don't know how much we need.
We don't know how many roads we need to fix and when.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. So if this program that Sam's talking about, Lexington has told him. So I think maybe you and Karen should go talk to Lexington. They've told Sam that they think they've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the way they've done this, because it identifies, it takes a picture, you go around, you take a picture of the whole road system. It knows from the picture how bad the road is. It tells you what order you should do things in and what you should do to the road. There's, like Sam says, there's 8 things you can do to a road, from blacktopping it to tearing the whole thing up. In between, there's a lot of things you can do, and this program tells you what you should do and when you should do it.
Yeah, it's just, I've already brought that up with Karen, and she was not interested.
Chief, what?
She was not interested. Said our town's too small to make the cost worth it.
How many people does Lexington have in it?
I think it's a lot bigger. I'm looking at
I know it's bigger, but how much bigger?
it.
I think a better question is, how much is the software?
Yep.
It's
and
it's
I don't know
software,
that either.
Tim, and they drive around your entire town and take pictures of your roads. So it's 34,000 people.
So 3 times as big, a little bit more than 3 times as big.
Yeah, I guess the question is, how much is the cost?
It's probably in the hundreds of thousands, not more.
Hmm.
I think.
But I still think we look at it, and maybe we decide we shouldn't do it, but we look at it, because right now it's like hit or miss what roads get done. So I've started watching the roads as I drive around now after I realized we had no normal road money. And there's a lot of roads around town that need some work. No doubt about it. So I don't think you say no to this until we really have more facts. And what's the downside of calling Lexington and getting the facts?
I'm just telling you, I presented the facts and asked her why we don't look into it, and she flat out said she was not interested. So unless we can get Mark to get her interested, I don't want to broach the subject for the 3rd time.
All right, so I'm still going to leave it there for the moment.
No, we should do it. It's just saying, I don't know how many. I'm kind of beating my head against the wall.
I think this is a good Mark discussion.
Yep, I understand. Okay. The next one might or might not be time sensitive. So I'm just going to skip that one for a moment. We've got other things to decide whether it's really time sensitive or not. There's some things that are going on that might make this really time sensitive. I wouldn't say 7 is particularly time sensitive, nor 8, nor 9.
So Kathy, I don't know how we're defining time sensitive,
I'm
but
trying to rank them, Jason, as far as we can't do all 13 simultaneously. So I'm trying to get this so we can rank what we're going to start on.
well, I think I'm just going to throw something out there. I think if we divide and conquer and realize that we're not going to have new members, at least for a couple of weeks, probably, but at least if we divide up, especially if anyone's very interested in any of these topics, divide up and start to make progress, I think what we're going to find, right, is maybe some of these get solved pretty quickly, or we abandon efforts because, for whatever reason, and some have a longer lead time than maybe we're anticipating, because while the accounting item is not time sensitive, you want to get this right before departments submit budgets and align on how the formatting is going to look. So it's the same thing with headcount. Is if someone's going to be coming in front of us in October, November, saying, I want to add X, Y, or Z employee, understanding what the cost of that employee is, I think is going to be important. And it's going to be beyond what any department head is going to ever bring us in a presentation. They're going to bring us what services we're going to get that we're not getting from them. So I don't know. That's what I was just thinking is if we just divide up the ones that people have an interest in and hope that our newer members have an interest in the other items, that we de-escalate.
I think certain ones are more thematic to advisory and some are more, we need to do it before next budget cycle. Right?
Well, that next budget cycle is going to start soon.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think, certain ones we need to have an answer on or we would want to have an idea prior to going into the next budget cycle.
Okay, so I wasn't trying to say we're not going to work on all these. I just think there's a couple that we really got to start working on right now. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of my red.
Kathy, do you want to paste these in an Excel and we can just rank them, stack rank them, and then go from there?
Okay. Well, it doesn't sound like that's what Jason wants to do. So let's do what he suggested.
I'm okay. I'm okay with if you want to rank them. I just thought the red was not working.
Okay, I don't think ranking is going to work either. I mean, they're all important. So what good is it going to do to rank them? I mean, that's not doing much different than what I'm doing, which is trying to say which ones to start on. So let's just leave it the way it is and let's go through and see who wants to basically own any one of these. We don't want to, I don't want to form a subcommittee. We don't have enough people to form subcommittees. And so we're not going to form a technical working group or subcommittee, but we're going to ask someone to be the point person. And that person then will seek the advice of the appropriate people on advisory, outside of advisory, as far as getting some help here.
My only question, Kathy, is do you think we should do the bylaw change together?
I think we should do that one next meeting with Al Hamilton coming because we're going to want his support. I think he had a lot to do with what happened at that meeting. I think a lot of people listened to what he said. I mean, you had a lot of town people voting against this, people who you wouldn't think would. So I think we do knock this one out early, like on the 23rd. And so I don't think anybody needs to take charge of that one, Tim.
Kathy, I would just put you down as a person, right? You're already talking to Al and setting it up. So that's basically it, right?
All right.
Kathy, you
Kathy,
can put me down.
Oh, go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
I was going to say, you can put me down for 6.
And Kathy, on 2, what I was going to say is, if you think it's appropriate, can we invite the moderator?
Yes, I do think it's appropriate.
Judy will take number 1.
What, Andrew?
Judy will take number 1, right, Judy?
Well, I was going to say, what is it? No, I was going to say 7.
I thought you were going to say 9, Judy.
Okay. No, good.
9's okay too. I'll do 9. Which one? Not both of them.
All right, so Judy, I'm giving you both of them.
Oh, God.
We'll help. We'll help. Okay. We got a lot more to go. I want to do 3. And Andrew, I know you're going to probably say you want to do 3. I'm certainly going to work with you on 3.
I have plenty. 3.
Okay, Jason.
Well, I want to nominate Andrew to do 5.
I'll
No,
do 5.
Definitely.
And then I am interested.
So Andrew, what do you want to nominate Jason for?
You can put me against 10 too, unless somebody else wants that. If we're talking usage fees.
Okay.
I think Jason would be 8. Mr. Yeah, the accounting.
Yeah,
background.
I'm happy to do 8. And where did it go? Oh, with the revolving funds 4.
Where's revolving funds? Where are we? There we go. Okay. All right.
I'm
Then
very
what
I'm very interested in 13 but Chelsea handles that as the BOS rep, so I think it should be someone else unless they change who has responsibilities there.
I'll do that one. Tim, what do you think about 12?
Yeah, I think it's a really small one. You can put my name on it.
Okay. All right, we got a name on almost every one of them, right? Tim, Andrew, just Willie.
I think the revenue generating one is all right. That's going to be.
I agree.
Kathy, do you want me to take? Oh,
Go ahead.
sorry.
No, I was just going to say we could chunk up different ideas to different people, but I think that's more of all of us.
All right, and I'd say leave one for the moment. Don't assign it yet. Till I get further with this, because this one is going to inform number one.
Yeah, I would say Brian. I'd almost assign one to Brian Palantine. So I was like, in terms, he's the one that like Capital didn't initiate the conversation on stabilization. He put that bug in my ear about 3 minutes after the committee started of wanting to re-engage.
He's clearly all for this, no doubt about it. He's made his opinion known. But that's actually dangerous too, that you're going in with what you want. You know, we want to look at this objectively, pros and cons, and not go in with, what we want.
Well, no, it's an education of why why he wants to explore it, so then we know what to do and vet it.
And I'd like to know from him and his conversations with the S&P and Moody's guys, what do they say about our lack of stabilization or where we're at? What are the auditors saying? What are their recommendations? Things like that.
Hey, Kathy, I had another one to add to the right-hand list.
Okay.
It's similar to the IT department staffing. MTC is doing their overarching security analysis of the town. I think that we need to monitor that, possibly push it, because it's too important to slow down.
Okay, I agree. That's a good one.
And Tim, they're going to do that in executive session, right?
I would hope so. I mean, I would hope that they would keep all the documents secure. Yeah.
Not sure they've got the ability to do that in executive session, but I guess
I think they do, Kathy.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they do.
All right.
Remember when we were putting the security cameras in the public safety building? That was one item we did in executive.
I do not remember that, Jason.
Yeah, it was a small little discussion, but yeah, we were able to do an executive for safety and security or something like that.
Okay. All righty. Okay, so we've assigned pretty much everyone. So I am not going to go much further with the assignments. People know what they are, but I do want to talk about, we've got to make sure that we are making progress. So I've got to know what to put on the agenda. So I know we're going to do the advisory bylaw on the 23rd. I will get my work done on the number 3 by the 23rd. So I can do that one. Anybody else want to volunteer to be ready on the 23rd, assuming that's the day we meet?
I don't think my two will. That's going to require some detailed conversations with a lot of stakeholders. So I don't think that's going to be possible.
I can do 13 as far as setting up the process. That's not going to be that hard, I don't think. It's pretty much that's easy. So I'll do 13. So on the 23rd, we'll do 2, we'll do 3, and we'll do 13.
If you want, I could tee up usage fee if we wanted to discuss what I have from the documents from other towns that have implemented it.
Okay, as far as
stormwater, wastewater usage fee.
Okay, so we can start the discussion. Just why don't you start it that night? I mean, I think that one's kind of an ongoing one.
Yeah.
So start that one. Okay. All right. So that's plenty for that night.
Hey, Kathy, will you send the list out this week?
Yep. Mr. Rooney, is there anything you want to talk about on the 23rd, since that might be your last meeting?
No, I've pretty much spoken up when I felt the need to over the past number of years, but thank you, Kathy.
Okay. All right. Yes, I will send this out after tonight's meeting and make sure everybody's got it, and I'll put it on OneDrive so it's there too. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on to the next topic unless anybody has anything else to say about this list, our to-do list. You know, women call these things to-do lists, right? And we know why. Okay, so Jason and I went to Personnel Board, had a normal meeting. Advisory was on the list. We didn't think there was going to be a quorum there, but we posted a meeting just in case. So it was just Jason and I. The main reason to go was to continue the discussion on the sick and vacation accrual and carryovers. And if you have time to watch that meeting, it was a really interesting meeting. Betsy ran that meeting really well. So I learned some things that I didn't know by just watching and being part of the whole thing. So Jason, you want to summarize the first part of it?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a really good discussion. There's obviously a lot of different perspectives on it, but I think the town is starting to receive more and more advice from our labor council that's informing the personnel board. And from what I can tell and what I see Ms. Rosenblum in the audience, would welcome her feedback. It sounds like this is going to be an item on their agenda until they come up with certain recommendations. I think the big item I walked away with is they are working with the assistant town administrator to compile as much data from other towns. And they did not put a demographic lens on it. So they just basically put out a request for certain data points to help inform the direction that they take. And I thought it was a very good conversation, very robust, and feel very comfortable in, the people that sit on that board, making, analyzing it and coming to a decision and making a recommendation to town meeting if they think there should be a change. And I also fully believe that they understand the reason why advisory at least raised it from a financial perspective, and took that under advisement. And to Mr. Rooney's point earlier in the meeting, I believe I was tasked with also making sure that the same lens was being put on the labor contracts, which, as I mentioned, are up this year. My personal opinion is those tended to be a little less aggressive in terms of the carryover provisions than what we have in the SAP. But again, I think it's an education and a collaboration now between all the different boards and committees that have authority over this, right? You've got personnel board that clearly has authority around recommendations related to the SAP. You have the board of selectmen that will be sitting there negotiating labor contracts. And obviously the board of selectmen regularly are doing department head contracts that contain certain language around this as well, and or refer to the same benefits afforded to SAP employees, which makes the SAP even more relevant as well, beyond just the true SAP employees. So that's my summary. Great conversation. And thanks to Ms. Rosenblum and her board for the invitation to join them.
That was good. And then Jason had to leave for another meeting, so I stayed to talk about a second issue that I probably wouldn't have done except for the fact that I was going anyway, and Betsy graciously let me do that. She gave me some latitude with that one, which was the advisory position on the staffing for the IT department. If you remember at town meeting, our new IT director, Jay, was asked, he was at the podium and was talking about what he intended to do as far as a new hire. I forget who asked him the question. It might have been Regina McAuliffe. But anyway, he answered it, and what he said did not seem consistent with what advisory had recommended through our conversations with MTC. And then I had been told that Mr. Purple, when he had met with Personnel Board recently, had basically reiterated what Jay had said at town meeting. And if you recall, what we had recommended and made sure there's enough money in the budget to do was we wanted a basically almost redundant second person that could stand side by side to Jay. If something happened to Jay, would be able to take over, but just as importantly, could work with Jay on making sure that we do what we can to protect this town. So we had not supported just hiring a help desk person or a part-time person, but that seemed to be where Jay thought we were going. and where Mr. Purple thought we were going with his conversations with personnel board. So all I wanted to do is express to personnel that that was not the advisory recommendation when we helped put that budget together, nor was that the MTC recommendation. So that was the whole purpose of me doing that. And I struck a nerve, and that's all I'm going to say. You may want to go watch the meeting. Struck a nerve. So what I thought that I would do next is go back to Matt Probst, the chair of MTC, because he was at town meeting. He heard what Jay said too, just to make sure that we understand what they think today, and see what they are working with Jay to do. Obviously, this money is available July 1st. No one's been hired yet. I don't know how far down the road they are, so they may be further down the road than we think. So anyway, Tim, you especially may want to go back and look at that meeting. So I was a little surprised about the reaction that I got. And I'm just going to leave it at that for now, and see if anybody's got any questions or any other suggestions that things we should do to continue to try to ensure that what we believe should happen is heard.
So my first question is, what's the selectmen's position? Are they not in agreement with MTC and with us? If they are in agreement, why are they not defining this policy to be implemented?
I don't know the answer as to what they think today. They've Andrew Dennington is now on Board of Selectmen. He was on advisory, so he certainly was part of the advisory discussion. Board of Selectmen, they were not as vociferous about the second person as we were. I know Chelsea was concerned about hiring another full-time person. I think she wanted to have a net. If we're going to hire a full-time person, she wanted a net, another person to be removed someplace else. So I don't know what they think today. I think that I should call them and talk to. I've got a phone call scheduled with Lisa Braccio when she gets back from vacation on Monday to talk to her about, and that's on my list. I'm just trying to let everybody know that that meeting yesterday definitely struck a nerve.
So I watched it after, Kathy, and obviously I wasn't there. I certainly think everyone should have a voice and make their voice known, but at the same time, we hire department heads to run departments. So either we have the wrong department head making advice, like they need to be afforded to make decisions and run their department. So I struggle with advisory getting too involved with telling and or at all involved in telling departments how to staff and what the job description should look like. What I do think we did a good job of is giving them funding for a higher priced resource than maybe what they're looking for, which as long as they're making progress on their goals, and I don't know whether this is happening or not, this is, I think, where we should spend our time is what are they doing to advance the IT department? And have they made any progress, and what are the inhibiting factors? And are the people that they're looking to hire going to offload some of the stuff, whether it's on Jay's plate or someone else's plate, to advance those? I just really struggle with overreaching advisory's bounds in terms of telling a department head what to do or strong arming them. MTC certainly should have a much stronger voice than advisory on this particular topic, given not only their expertise in the area, but the collaboration that they're naturally supposed to have with that specific department.
I totally agree with the last part what you said. I totally disagree with the first part of it. We're not telling them what to do. We are recommending what we believe they should do. This issue is too important to let something happen that we strongly disagree with. But what we were trying to do, and I think we still should try to do, is just make sure that MTC's voice is heard loud and clear. I just don't understand when, they've got the talent they do in MTC, why that is not occurring. It just doesn't seem like it is. It seemed like it was. Angela had said to me that Jay was totally on board with this, and now it seems like it's not. So I don't know what's happened is my point, Jason. We thought that that's where they were going, and now they're not. So I don't know what the Board of Selectmen has said. I don't know what's happened to get to this point, but I just think this is too important to
I could be wrong, but isn't this the town? This is where I need help with someone that was on that town administrator bylaw committee. I mean, isn't this within either the department head or the town administrator's view? But yeah, I mean, I think you should encourage MTC to continue to have a voice, but I think they have public meetings and invite whoever they need to be at the table to advance the discussion or ask for an appointment with the BOS. But I don't remember the BOS talking about this after the budget, right? In terms of what the job description is.
Ultimately, all authority lies with the boss in this area. So if they're not giving clear direction, it doesn't surprise me that it's business as usual instead of business the way we've recommended. So our town manager is a town admin, does not have much discrete power outside of what the boss delegates to him.
Tim, have you had any further conversations with anybody on MTC since town
No,
meeting?
I have not.
So the point of what I said yesterday to personnel was just to say, I want personnel to know what the advisory recommendation was. As simple as that. No more, no less. But I do think we need to either invite MTC back to the next advisory meeting, or Tim, you have a discussion with Matt Probst and see where things are as far as they're concerned.
Right. Ultimately, it would be a function of us and MTC again going to the selectmen,
Right.
saying we had a meeting, we told you what we thought our concerns were, and a month later, 2 months later, what have you, we got you the budget, it's not being used properly. I mean, that's the path forward. The selectmen would then have to choose to vote. They would have to give explicit instructions to the town manager, right, to hire the people that we feel should be hired. And it would have to be the boss doing it, not MTC, not advisory.
So what do you think about inviting Matt back to our next meeting?
I would like to have him come back on a periodic basis. I don't know what the frequency should be, but for this issue, but also just to get regular updates on their security analysis.
Okay, so we can do both at one time.
Okay.
All right. Anybody have an issue with inviting Matt to our next meeting?
No issue, but I think his time is better spent with the Board of Selectmen, to be completely honest.
Well, I don't disagree with that either, Jason. I just am trying to understand, wanting advisors to understand what they think so we know where this is going. And what I think should happen is we should continue to encourage everyone to listen to their advice. To me, that's one of our main roles, is to encourage the reliance on MTC.
So can I ask a simple question? Town meeting was May 22nd. We're now on June 10th.
Yep.
We budgeted this position starting July 1st, right?
Correct.
There is no ad out there for this position yet.
You know
Is
that?
That's a question. Sorry.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if there is or not. So I don't know.
I guess I'll check the town website where we talk, but I guess
Okay.
if it isn't out there, is it this issue that's causing it not to be out there, or is it something else? Because I think that's really where we should focus is, look, we gave funding, but nothing's out there, as opposed to telling someone what should be in a job description or what this person should be doing. But I get that they somehow go hand in hand, potentially based on the type of candidate you're looking for and the salary you're willing to offer.
But, we did recommend a budget that included room for a second full-time person comparable in background to the IT manager. Betsy Rosenblum is raising her hand. Can we bring her over?
We certainly can. You may want to, while I bring Betsy over, Tim Litt also made a comment that I think we have to read into the record.
Hey, Kathy, before you go further in this discussion, is it my understanding, and again, I apologize for not being available at town meeting, but we indicated the type and the salary for this new IT person. We believe that the selectmen were on board with that, but between that meeting and town meeting, the new IT director is changed that charge. Is that pretty much what we're talking about?
Well, the first thing that happened, John, was at town meeting. Jay spoke. So everybody help me remember here. Was it Regina McAuliffe's question that got him up there on that budget? I think it was. But anyway, somebody asked a question that they asked Jay to come up and speak from the podium about. And during his talk, he said, "This is what I'm trying to hire." So that was the first indication that it wasn't, a second full-time comparable person. Then the next,
Can I ask what he proposed?
So Tim, help me. He proposed.
It was a desktop help desk support. So it's basically John, so he doesn't have to go around and help people with their, regular day-to-day issues. So a lower level IT support.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And I think, as I hear this conversation going back and forth, I think I'm less concerned about what the job description is or what the salary is. We all kind of felt on what the goal was. And that's the kind of strategy of having a backup and having succession planning. And, I think that strategy is not being implemented. I don't care what the job description says. They can write whatever they want as long as they're accomplishing that goal.
And I just want to remind everybody, we didn't have an IT director for 5 months because of having a one-person department. Okay, is Betsy here? There she is.
Yeah, Kathy, the reason I asked the question, Kathy, is do we want to bring Matt in as to try to resolve this, or is this something that needs to be resolved at really a higher level?
Well, I'm going to read what Tim Litt has said to all of us so that we've got this on the record. Tim says that MTC is still working the issue. MTC position hasn't changed, which means it's consistent with advisory because we followed their lead. Mark Purple is deferring to Jason, the IT director. There is no position, including no position in SAP for a lower level hire, which is part of the problem. That's what was discussed a lot yesterday as far as how to do this when there's no position to do it on the current SAP. Jason sees more urgency for freeing his time than for key man insurance. So this is all from Tim Litt. Okay, Betsy, you're on.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify from my perspective, there needs to be a position in the SAP to hire into. And of course, I've discussed this with Mark. He's the personnel director. If it's not a union position, if it isn't allowed to have a contract by state law, and if it is an employee, it's in the SAP. So if anyone asked me, I open up my SAP and I look at the schedule and I say, where could you fit somebody? And there is a position of IT manager, obviously, that Jason has now. I've taken the position and I've told other people, it doesn't say you can only have one IT manager. But when Kathy was at the personnel board meeting yesterday, a member of my board had a different position. So if somebody were to bring this, personnel doesn't usually decide these things in a vacuum just for the heck of it. If someone brings us a request to adjudicate that issue, we'll discuss it and decide. Because really, as you said, below IT manager, you get into maybe grade 5 business administrator too. And when I talked to somebody about the position early on, that didn't seem to be where you wanted to go. But Mark Purple came to he's at all our personnel board meetings. On May 12th, you can look at the minutes, they've been filed. He told the board, or they will be shortly, they were just approved yesterday. He told the board that he would be hopefully developing a job description and looking for SAP assistance. Would my board be willing to entertain this for a fall town meeting? And we jumped up and down and said, of course, we're always happy to help people get where they need to go. We often feel hamstrung that we don't have the flexibility to add positions or help people out more than once a year. Yesterday, he came to the meeting and said he does not want to proceed to develop anything with us for the SAP for town meeting. He wants to take his time. He wants to bring it into the regular SAP for annual town meeting. And in the meantime, he's going to hire a contractor. But when asked by a member of my board, do you plan to pay the contractor benefits? He said yes, which then led to a discussion of that would make the person an employee. So there's a little something going on there that I don't quite understand the planning process. So if somebody wanted to bring this, it doesn't have to be Mr. Purple, could be advisory. We're open to anybody. Come and talk to us, MTC, about what the possibilities are under the SAP. We can do that now. Oh, Tim is
Hey,
sending
Betsy,
a
this
message.
is John.
Tim is sending a
Betsy,
message.
this is John.
Yeah.
Betsy, this is John Rooney. Thank you for that. So am I correct in that the position that Jay was explaining at town meeting is a position that is not within the SAP? Conversely, a position that advisory and the selectmen, the scope of duties of that new position, they would, at least on your mind, come under the IT manager slot.
Yeah, I can't say exactly what's in someone else's mind, John, but if
Yeah.
you're talking about someone comparable to Jason and just, opposite where the positions are listed, this is section 20, schedule A, you can see the salary ranges.
Yep.
So I took the position that you could hire more than one IT manager because I thought that's what you were talking about. And then there's not really anything in grade 7. They're very specific, or in grade 6. So
Okay.
that leads you to the next highest position is business administrator 2 under grade 5.
Great.
So what I understood Mark to say in May was he would try to develop a job description with Jason, the needs of the department, and they would come to us. And if we were open to it, make a recommendation for fall town meeting. And we embraced this. But yesterday he told us he doesn't want to go in that direction. He'd like to take more time with it, develop it, come see us in time for spring town meeting. And in the meantime, to meet his needs, he would hire an independent contractor. And that's beyond the purview of the SAP. We deal with employees.
Thank you, Betsy. That's very clear. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Can I just add something? Tim Litt messaged me here. He said under 16E, we can provide extraordinary relief between town meetings, 16E of the SAP. The person, and I'll read it to you. The personnel board may tentatively add a new class to the classification schedule, subject to subsequent ratification by formal amendment at the next town meeting. I've never understood how that works. We extend an offer to somebody, hire them, and then we have to get it ratified at town meeting. I can never guarantee that town meeting's going to ratify anything. The year I came on the board was because town meeting didn't pass an SAP. So thank you, Tim, for that, but that would take a little discussion too, because I can't guarantee how it would be ratified. And if it wasn't ratified by town meeting, you would potentially have to let the person go. So.
Nothing's easy, is it?
No. So I encourage any interested party, get on my agenda as soon as possible. Town meeting if in the fall will be right around the corner. We're ready, willing, and available to hear from you and decide any issues that involve the SAP.
And Betsy, I would agree with you on an IT manager. Why can't we have more than one when we have more than one police lieutenant? Things of that nature. I don't see why. And the salary range would work for what we're looking for. I don't see why you couldn't have 2 IT managers.
Yeah, so there's 5 members of the personnel board. We obviously this hasn't been debated, but there's 5 people and you come and you present your case and we'll hear you out. One member said They didn't think that was appropriate. I do think it's appropriate, so. But
MTC
nobody's brought us
MTC
the
thought it was
issue
perfect.
formally.
Kathy,
I
getting
don't
back
have
to
a
your
view
list-
on.
Go ahead,
Sorry,
Jason. Go ahead.
sorry, John. I was just gonna say, I don't have a view on, Betsy, I'll leave that to you and your board of whether one or two makes sense or doesn't make sense, but there is only one police lieutenant. So I think there are positions that look like they could have more than one, but there's only one police lieutenant.
Yeah, and Kathy, your initial question as to whether or not this should be an item on the next advisory calendar, I would say no. I think it's gotta be worked out with the selectmen and before we can ultimately, I mean, because what we're gonna do on our next meeting, just talk about what we just talked about now. I'd rather
Well,
have,
Tim
Go
has,
ahead.
well, the idea was to get Matt Probst there just to update us on where he thought things were, to see if they still believe they needed a second strong person. Because I think the board of selectmen need to have that reiterated from MTC. But if they've changed their mind and they are approaching this differently, then I think we stop. So that was the purpose. And plus, as Tim said, we could also get an update on their security analysis of the departments, which is one of the things we say we're going to monitor. So we could do two things with one meeting as far as them coming there. And I agree that with Tim, that I think it's healthy to meet with MTC on a regular basis. When they came in front of us last year during the budget season, I thought that was a really productive meeting. But if the majority don't want to see MTC next time, we won't. But I'll still call Matt and find out at least, where they stand. I can report back. So, Jason, do you want MTC to come, or do you want me just to find out what's going on and report back?
I'm more in the camp of Mr. Rooney. I think we certainly can listen. I'm happy to spend the time with them, but I think this needs to go to the BOS if there's a concern and a difference in opinion between the town administrator, the IT manager, and the MTC. We can keep speaking about it, but they're the ones that will be able to affect any change that this group may be looking for.
Tim?
Sorry, couldn't get off mute. I'd still like them to come, even though I agree that the selectmen are the ones who have to, they're the ones that can make a difference here. But there's nothing wrong with advisory and MTC working together to help make that happen.
Okay, so I'm going to invite them. I just don't see any downside to doing that. And we can talk to them about anything we want to too, as far as what they're doing with their other work. Okay, so I'm going to invite them for a brief conversation on the 23rd. Right. Betsy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, nice to see you again. All right. Okay, anything else on that topic? Okay, so we're nearing the end. Any other business properly brought forth from any of you? Okay. Who's in our audience right now? So I'm going to stop the screen share.
It's just Mr. Litt and Ms. Rosenblum.
Okay. So any public comment from our audience besides what we just heard? Okay. All right, so we've already talked about the schedule as far as what we could talk about. So we'll know more in a couple of days once we know what the state's going to let us do, not do. So just watch your email and I will update you as soon as I hear, and then we'll decide what to do. So right now, the 23rd is going to be in person. The townhouse is available. Does that suit everybody? Assuming the public safety building's not, which it looks like it's not right now.
It's fine.
All right, so All right, so if we may be seeing each other in person on the 23rd at the townhouse. If not, if we can do the Zoom, we're going to do a Zoom because Jason, you can't come on the 23rd in person, correct?
99% sure that that's the case. Yeah.
Okay, so we'd still have 5 without you, but I hate.
Now, Kathy, I didn't weigh in on my ability to be there physically. I cannot also be there physically on the 23rd.
Okay, so I think that that decides what we're going to do on the 23rd, assuming we can, which is we've got to do a Zoom. And I hope we can, because if we have to do the remote participation, you've got to have a quorum sitting there, and we wouldn't.
Kathy, did we decide on a date for doing reserve fund stuff?
No, I'm going to talk to Brian first and see what he thinks as far as his timing goes, and we're going to have to work around that. Because some people don't want to meet back to back the first 2 weeks in July. And I'm almost positive last year was literally the last day that we did it. Because they've got to close their books and see what's needed. Okay, all right. Okay, so that's it. Judy, you want to make a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I adjourned a while ago. Yeah, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay. Claire, AP seconded. Roll call vote, Judy?
Buzz eye.
Cook, aye. AP?
Aye.
Jason?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Mr. Mooney?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. So Claire, that was 6-0.
And thank you, Claire.
And
Thank
thank
you,
you, Claire, for
Thank you.
everything.
Thank
Caught
you.
up. Okay. All right. Bye.